Okay, so I believe we are live and I shall start talking as though we are. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Medieval Cooking Party with the Creative Contessa. I am excited to bring to you a guest today who has been exploring an amazing and interesting source, a Transylvanian cookbook from the 16th century. And so this is a new geography of cuisine for me, and I'm confident it's a new geography of cuisine for all of you. So yeah, let's get down to the excitement. And while we are chatting, I shall be preparing a 15th century Neapolitan ravioli recipe that is a recipe for doughless ravioli. These are just, it's basically the best part of the ravioli. It's the filling. It's just the filling and it's all cheese. So yummy. So I'm excited to do some comparative food history as well. So Katie, welcome to the Creative Contessa. Thank you so much for
Hi,
joining us today.
I'm so excited. This is such a cool opportunity. I've been following you for a number of years now. And we chatted over the last couple of years about potentially getting you out to an event in Avocal sometime. For everybody who doesn't know where Avocal is, which is a lot of people, that's it's a kingdom in the SCA that is Saskatchewan, Alberta, Northwest Territories, and a little bit of British Columbia, all in Canada. So one of the only all Canadian kingdoms, and so yeah, it's really cool. You've got quite the reach. People all over the world are
Wow.
interested in what you do. So
Yeah, yesterday I did an impromptu medieval sewing party live stream, and I had many people from India actually
nice.
joining in. So that was
That's
that was
really cool.
really that was really cool, especially
Yeah.
because one of them was actually pretty well versed in Indian history, so but like ancient Indian history. So it
Nice.
was an interesting conversation. Yeah. So for those who don't know, the Society for Creative Anachronism is the oldest medieval recreationist group in the Americas. It's not a reenactment group. And living history, I would use that word differently than most people would understand it. There's a range of people in exploring medieval material culture in a range of ways and exploring at different levels, depths of research. So some people just show up and just have a good time, and other people find 16th century Transylvanian cookbooks and make feasts from them. So tell us about this source. This
Yeah.
was so exciting. I actually heard about it, not from you. There was some posts going around about it in the historical cooking community
Oh,
6 months
cool.
ago. So I
Neat.
feel like maybe this is a recent, the availability is recent, probably.
So from what I could see, it looks like it was like the cookbook. Obviously, the cookbook itself has been around since the 16th century, and it looks like in I think it was 2018-ish, somewhere in there.
Hmm.
There's a group of reenactors, and they didn't say what group they were from. I wouldn't be surprised if they were SCA, just based on the way they wrote about it. But you never know. There's lots of groups. A group of reenactors worked together to crowdfund the translation from like Hungarian that they had that they'd put together into English, and so
Ah,
the availability in English is fairly recent, like in the last decade or so, which I
right.
think is really cool. I stumbled upon it. Kind of with a couple extra steps in between. I didn't just find this translation. The One of the people that was working with me on this feast that I was going to be doing was talking about the roast that they always make, and make it out of the tasting history cookbook. And so
Right.
I went to the tasting history cookbook to look at the roast recipe, and then they referenced this cookbook, and I just sort of Googled. I was like, well, I'll see if I can find any other recipes from that cookbook and it turns out I could find all of them. A 700-page document,
Wow.
because yeah, no, it was absolutely incredible. So I originally, like, I did all of my feast prep just online, like just looking at the PDFs online, and then afterwards I finally just came and I bought myself an actual like print
Ha,
copy that can just be ordered. So now I've got this
nice.
almost like a souvenir, but there's so many incredible recipes in it and so many resources. Like it's so much. I could do 5 feasts of the scale that I did, without repeating a recipe once. Like it just is endless options here.
Roughly how many recipes does the
Well,
collection contain?
it was a 700-page document, a couple of pages of forwarding, like forward information, glossary terms, that sort of thing.
Right.
And then the last little section was there's an entire month of menus, which I think is really amazing. Like from this Prince of Transylvania's kitchen,
Wow.
it's like January 1st, this is what we're having for lunch, this is what we're having for dinner, and lists, 12 courses or whatever.
Wow.
January
That
2nd,
is
here's all the things for lunch, here's all the
that
things for dinner.
that
Um,
is that is such an incredible window into the past, right?
oh, it
Because
was a gold mine. So yeah, so
because
almost the whole document
because
is recipes.
because a lot of people, a lot of modern cooks who are approaching historical cuisine and in any era, they'll find a recipe collection and they'll just kind of go through and pick out recipes that appeal to their personal taste. And that's how they'll put together a menu for a meal at a reenactment event,
Hmm.
or a living history event or a LARP event, whatever your event is, right? But
Yeah,
what it turns out when you start looking at those menus, because there are other Western European recipe collections also have menus included in them, which I always think
cool.
that's fascinating that they found it important to include these menus, not just
Hmm.
the recipes, but to basically say, this is the kind of food I can prepare, and here's how I decided to put it all together into this
Yeah,
masterful feast, right? But
yeah,
what's interesting is the that the way the kinds of dishes they put together almost never align with what modern cooks end up doing if they're just left to their own devices to put
yeah,
together menus, right? Did
yeah.
when you looked at the menus, how did you, comparing it to, say, other feasts you've attended at recreation events or even modern menus, what thoughts did you have? Like, what were your
Um,
reactions?
what I genuinely considered just making exactly one of those menus. I was gonna
Hmm.
see, some of the names for it didn't exactly correlate with the cookbook itself, which is, that's how
Right.
it goes. I was disappointed. Unfortunately, there's a lot of fish in the menu, and that's, the time period, the
Yes.
area, and at
Yep.
least in our our branch of the SCA. I remember there a number of years ago there was a sort of an unofficial poll that went out, and the question was, how do we feel about fish at feasts? Like just
Right.
generally as a populace,
Right.
what do we think? And there are a few people that were like, yes, 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 give me fish, we love fish. But most of the answers included some combination of I have fish or shellfish allergies and I can't, or I straight up
Yeah.
hate it, or most people were, even the people that liked it were like, I like fish but not enough that my feast experience is diminished if it's not included, so I'm
Right.
okay if we don't include it to make sure that we're safe for all the people that do have allergies and stuff. And so just kind of culturally as a kingdom, we don't really do fish at our feasts very often to sort of accommodate all of those. It's something I've
Yeah.
considered as like, if we were to do maybe an outdoor, like a camping event, have some sort of a roving
Right.
feast, people could, like, we could have, like, if people want the fish course, they can go to this camp or something. That would be a grand scale thing to plan. So not something I'm going to put together for this year. So it's a possibility in the future, but we'd have to be careful about it.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
did I did kind of do that. I did a little bit of like my own tastes, and then tweaked it to be like I restructured how our feasts are served,
Right.
um, to make it as
Yes.
accurate to what I was finding in the research,
Yeah.
which
So
was
it's
a
it's
bit of a
always
change.
it's always a challenge, right? When you're cooking for a modern audience, um, depending regionally where you are, you're going to have sort of base expectations on what a meal should contain. And I, I, I will tell you my experience with Western European medieval menus, medieval cookbooks. When you see the menus, they are also very fish heavy.
Yeah.
Um, Even on non-fish days, they're fish heavy because there's a
Yep.
lot of fish that were considered a luxury food, like eel. Eel is like
Yeah.
the most popular, the most luxury fish in medieval Western Europe. And were there any eel? Did you find any eel recipes in or
I
mention
think
of
I
eel in
I
those
think I
menus?
spotted a couple.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I
I
bet you
didn't,
did.
yeah, I didn't look too closely at them. I had to put my feast together on a shorter timeline than I would have liked, so I was kind of doing it at a very fast pace. Someday I'm going to read this thing
Right,
cover to cover. I was so enamored with it. I found that the writing, the way the original cookbook author, this kitchen manager, the head of the staff or whoever for the kitchen in this Transylvanian prince's uh, uh, castle, like his team, whoever this was, the way
right,
he writes, it just really hit home for me. I was like, this is very familiar. And then also the way that the translators and the people that were like putting the way that they wrote some of their footnotes are just sassy. Like there is attitude here, and I fell in love with it. I was like, I get these people. They get me, like
Yeah,
the way they're communicating. And so yeah, I fully intend to read this thing cover to cover someday. But my initial putting it together was a lot of like control and find and finding
right,
keywords
right,
and
right,
putting
right.
together stuff, and then stumbling upon other things along the way and like, oh, this is really neat, or just start reading a page and then I end up finish reading that page, just even though that didn't the rest of the recipes weren't what I was looking for.
Right,
And
right.
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, in the Middle Ages across Europe and across Christianity, actually, so not just Europe, where Christians were, and this was sort of one of these universal truths amongst all flavors of Christianity in the Middle Ages, and there were lots across Eurasia and Africa. Contrary to popular belief, the church the Roman Church was not the only one. And there was the Coptic Church in Africa, there was the Ethiopian Church, there were the Nestorian and Thomasian sects of Christianity in Asia, Central Asia and Eastern Asia in some places. So there were different kinds of Christianity, but it seems to have been a universal truth before the Reformation that all Christians observed fasting days. And fasting days are days on which you are not supposed to eat meat. You're not supposed to eat animal products, generally like dairy, for instance, is out. And there were over 120 of these days on the calendar every year. There were Ember days, which are days on which you're supposed to observe fasting for the sake of balancing your soul. There were Lenten days, so the entire period of Lent. Advent was another one. And then there were a whole bunch of feast days, saints' feast days, and holy days of observance on which we're also supposed to eat this Lenten diet of no meat. So that means fish do not count as meat in the
Yeah,
medieval mindset. Do you know why, Katie? It has nothing to do with it's really a strange reason. Do you know why?
I remember being told once, but it didn't stick, so fill me in.
Yeah. So this is the medieval ideas of biology are scientific but incorrect. So, medieval people were very scientific. They had science. It's just that there's the fundamentals of their science was not always right. And so their fundamental understanding of fish reproduction was that fish did not reproduce sexually,
Right.
that they just spawned, right? Like no eggs, no fertilization, they just spawned, which meant that eating fish would not inflame your lust because they did not reproduce sexually, which is not true.
No.
but it's what they thought because they couldn't observe it firsthand. And
you can see how they got there.
Yeah, you can see how you got there. It's observational science. It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So they believed that if you ate the flesh of animals that reproduce sexually, then your lust would be inflamed and you would not be in a state of grace to participate in these religious observances. So that's why fish didn't count. It wasn't an question of ethics. Like now we have vegetarians who avoid fish and land mammals because they don't want to eat something with a face. It's nothing to do with that. It's about how they thought they sexually reproduced.
Yeah.
So what that means is when you've got 100, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was an article of faith, right? Yeah. So 120 days on the calendar when you can't eat animals that sexually reproduce according to their own science is a lot of days. So you have to come up with a lot of options to fill in that menu, right?
Yeah.
So hence why there are so many fish recipes in all of these collections. All of these collections are really fish heavy. The Neapolitan recipe collection is probably 30% fish, and it's only 30% because there's like 20% of it is also pasta and ravioli. So if you extracted the pasta dishes, then the ratio of meat dishes to fish dishes would definitely shift drastically.
Yeah, I was surprised that the last feast that I made was about 15th century German. And I remember I didn't have a specific cookbook that I was using for that one. I was on a bunch of like medieval cooking recipe sites and stuff like that. And so I was just pulling recipes from there, and pasta options
Right,
out the
right,
wazoo. I was surprised proportionally how many how fewer they were in this one, compared to what I thought around that time period. There's just pasta everywhere. And like there definitely was a lot of options, but not nearly as many as I expected there to be. So that was really neat. Um, and it could just be translation, could be the things that they bothered to write down, and maybe they didn't think that you need to explain it every single time. But a lot of the detail in this. In this cookbook, like the a lot of the stuff I found charming was the fact that he wrote everything down. um, and sometimes it would be as simple as like, cook it the way I told you and add this stuff. And it's like, okay, I wonder what the way he told me is. I'll just make it up, I guess. Like that's fine. But he still wrote down, cook it the way I told you. And I'm like, that's
right,
a level of detail. Like you know what that manager is like. You know what it's like working in that kitchen.
right.
You
He's
can
he,
tell.
he's he's
Yeah.
he's a micro. You think he's a micromanager? You think he was a
I think so.
micromanager?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah, what I found that this it really felt the same way that I found the experience very immersive, because it's like this feels like reading that email you get from your boss before he goes on vacation, and he's going to
Right,
be gone for a couple weeks, and it's like, here's all the details, everything you need to know, and you're going to do this the way I told you, and you can do this. I know, I believe in you, it's going to be fine. Don't listen when this person tries to tell you this, because he doesn't know what he's doing. I know what I'm doing. You listen to me. And like all of those details were throughout it, and I was like, people really haven't changed. Like he just took the time to write out 700 plus pages of documents instead of sending one really long email, but it's the exact same thing. Like all those details are there. So anytime, as I was putting
control
this piece
freak.
together, yeah, anytime I didn't have a clear answer in my searches and the information, anytime there was something that wasn't spelled out, I chose to interpret it as, that means it didn't exist, or that means they didn't do it, because he was writing
Right.
everything down. And there's probably other explanations for it, but that was just what I went with in my read of it, my interpretation.
So
And
so
same thing
um
with the cheese
so
was another thing like
right.
that. Then it just
So
there just
he
wasn't much.
would you say so Western European. So everyone, first off, welcome if you're just joining to our medieval cooking party. I'm the creative Contessa, and I'm here with my dear long distance friend Katie. She has been exploring this Transylvanian cookbook from the 16th century, a massive compilation of recipes written for a prince by a micromanaging head cook. um, and so we're just talking today about her experience cooking recipes from that. And so we're also at the same time, because I have no experience with 16th century Transylvanian cuisine whatsoever. My experience is all Western Europe. So it's very interesting at medievally Western Europe. Otherwise, my people come from Eastern Europe. But anyway, it's very interesting to compare this compilation of recipes with its Western European brethren, because I'm hearing so many similarities. A lot of these recipe collections do indeed feel like you're being talked at,
Yeah.
not talked to, talked at, and that the cook, the person writing these recipes, has definite opinions
Oh
about
yeah.
things. And that also, it's not just about the recipes, right? It's also about the menus. It's in a lot of the Western ones, it very much feels like it wasn't necessarily expected that a random person should be able to pick up this collection and make the recipes.
Yeah.
That only people who are already in the know should use these collections. And then in some cases, I believe that steps are intentionally left out so that the person reading, the person to whom this cookbook has been dedicated, because they're nearly always dedicated to a prince or a princess or something like
Yeah.
that, should hire this person. It almost reads like a resume.
That makes
Like,
sense. Yeah.
here are all these things I could make for you. Here are the ingredients they contain. I'm not going to tell you about ratios and timings because only I know them. So if you want me to make these beautiful dishes for you, you should hire me. Like I get that impression
Yeah.
often from the Western corpus. Were these recipes detailed enough that you could just like knock it out, just successfully follow it exactly as stated, or was there
Oh,
also a lot of
yeah.
room for interpretation?
Oh no, I made it up. Like all the way through. I was thrilled because like like I said, it reads like somebody writing to his staff. In this case, it was a little less resume. Like there's a lot of like explaining to your staff how to show off. So there'd be like, if your lord has a crest, you can make this dish in the shape of his crest and stuff like that.
Right.
So it was a lot of like those kind of instructions. And yeah, the recipes pretty much were all cook this the way I told you, and then add these spices, and or it'll have like base directions of like you put it in the pot and you cook it, and I'm like, wonder how am I putting it in like am I putting it in water, am I just putting it in dry, are we
Right.
seasoning in advance, like it was a lot of that, and it's like, and you put it in and you cook
Put
it
it in,
if you
right.
yeah
That's a good point. Put it in the pocket and cook it. Like, do you fry it? Do you boil it? Do you
yep
poach it?
Yep.
Do you steam
And
it?
he was pretty good about like sometimes saying fry this in butter or put it in with the water, and then there it made me laugh how many times it's like, and you cook this in wine, and if you don't have wine you can add water, and I'm like, well, that's going to change the taste a lot to go from
That is
like I love how flexible you are here, buddy, but like really those are not the same recipe anymore. If it's just like, if you don't have water or wine, just put water in, that's fine. I'm like,
Yeah, which
okay.
is it's interesting. So there are the recipes from Western European sources say the same thing. You know,
Yeah.
boil it in good broth or water. It's like that's going to result in a very different dish.
Yeah.
Um,
So that was
but
really interesting throughout, to see those kinds of examples where it would just be like, if you don't have this you can do this, and then like those feel like secrets, like this feels like writing instructions to your junior cooks and your apprentices
right,
and that sort of thing. And so it
right,
didn't include the details like measurements. Here and there it'd say a pound of this or whatever, but overall, a lot of the recipes that I was making, I would find, it was basically giving me an ingredients list and an approximate order that the things would
right.
go in. And so then I would go and either just make it up with my own sort of modern culinary experience, or I would try to find like a modern recipe that has similar types of cooks or similar sort of,
Characteristics,
and then
right.
and then tweak it from there. Like I called a bunch of them just Franken recipes, like they're just a conglomeration of like 8 different things, and I sort of put it together and like, here's our dish. So the
So
recipes themselves
do you
inspire.
have an example of an actual? Do you have on hand? Do you have an example of any actual original recipes that you could just read for to give people a sense of what it looks like to look at an actual translation of a 16th century recipe versus a modern recipe?
Okay, I'm the do I made a bunch of notes and stuff here. There's one that absolutely tickled me, and so I quoted it specifically in my notes because it just made me
Right,
so very happy. Um, so I named it, Lord Janosch's pears and carrots, and the recipe was just called, I think, pears and carrots, and it said, take some pears, slice them like you would carrots, fry them in butter, add some wine, then some sugar, currant, cook these together. You will have good carrots this way. And then he says, trust me, my lord Janosch, because you can serve it this way. And then I sort of took that. I didn't fry it in butter and add wine. I just sort of did like a honey glazed, pears and carrots, and I used the same spices. I added currants, that kind of thing. Instead of frying in butter, I just sort of drizzled in oil just to make it, a little bit easier. But that one stood out to me because I was like, why the little note to Janosch about, you can do it this way? I was like, was this, a 10-year-old apprentice that was giving, like, it seemed like a fairly straightforward recipe. So this little
right.
this little blurb of encouragement stood out. I was like, was he 10 years old and like given his first dish of like, you're in charge of this, you can do it, buddy? Or was
So
he 40 with crippling anxiety? Or was that the author kind of roasting somebody because one guy burned it out all to crap one day? It's like, you can do it, we know, and it was actually pretty easy. Like I had no idea, but it stood out because I thought it was really, really cute.
so it's really curious. So he says, so the title of lord is a title of nobility, and those
Yeah,
kind of people wouldn't have been in the kitchen.
yeah.
So this is, as a linguist, as a professional translator, this would make me go back and look at the original
Yes, which you
and see
can
if I
find online as well, as
which
far as
which
I
I would
know.
then I would then want to parse whether Lord was the correct translation, because if it was, then it strikes me that this is just a snarky aside to some nobleman who tried to tell him his business.
Yeah, yeah. I was like,
It's
this could be encouragement. Lord
it's I
in this translation was not capitalized, so it was sort of like a little bit more informal. But like it's hard to say as not a linguist, and that's why I was like, I kind of want your read on some of this stuff because it could be a translation thing, it could
yeah.
be snark, and all of the situations that I had in my head for what this like, trust me, you can do this as what looks like a pretty straightforward recipe was just funny. I was like, was it a kid? Did they have anxiety? Did they screw it up? And they're like, he's just teasing him. And like, even you can do it. It's okay, buddy.
You
Like,
can,
because everybody in that kitchen knows that last time he made this dish, he messed it up horribly. Like, I have no idea, but that one stood out. And even though it was a pretty straightforward, I was like, everybody's had pears and carrots with some sweetness and a
right.
couple of spices. Like everyone's had that at a Christmas dinner and stuff. So I
Right,
was like,
right.
it's
It's
not
a
going to
it's a
be,
pretty typical holiday dish in the West, right?
yeah, I was like, this
So
isn't
you
going to stand out, but I'm including it just because I think that's really cute and I like it. So,
so why did you so you made some choices there. Why did you choose to not fry them in butter and then was adding wine? Wasn't that what he said? Butter and
yeah, yeah,
wine?
it said do butter and then put wine in. It was a little bit like I was substituting butter for non-dairy margarine or switching out to like an oil instead, where I
Right.
could. Just because, like I said, I was aiming for about 120 people, and so I
Hmm.
wanted to catch as many of the allergen considerations as I could, and a lot of people are
Yeah.
lactose free. So one of the things I do is I'm like, it says butter, I'm doing not butter.
Right.
We'll
Right.
give the
And
same
that's
effect.
and actually so that we talked about this a little bit earlier, that would have been a medieval practice for different reasons. They didn't give a crap about allergies because they just didn't seem to have been such a thing back then,
Mhm.
but which is a whole different conversation that I could absolutely dive into. But they absolutely would have substituted oil on a fish day, 100%, because
Yep.
butter was a no-go on the 100+ fish days that there were on the medieval calendar. So even though you made that substitution for a modern reason, it is actually, in fact, a historical practice before the
Mm.
modern era. So
Yeah.
yay! What kind of oil did you end up choosing? Did you go with olive oil
I think I
or?
did olive. Yeah, throughout what it either said oil or it specified tree oil.
Mhm.
And I remember I was like, tree oil, what is that? And I had to message a friend because I've only been doing medieval cooking for about 2.5 years. Like I've been
Mhm.
in and out of the SCA for more than half my life, but I only started my cooking journeys fairly recently.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff that I'm still like learning about how to interpret this, like the basics. And so I was like, what is trio? And they're like, probably olive. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, olive makes sense.
I
That's
would I would
straightforward.
I would I would agree with that. So there's, yeah, tree oil. That is an interesting term. And again, I would really want to go back and look at the original linguist
Yeah.
brain,
I'm
because
sorry in
tree
advance
oil
for the
could.
rabbit hole I'm sending you down, but
Right, I know it's terrible. I need more life. I need more time. Um, so tree oil could be olive, it could be almond oil, right?
mhm,
It could be walnut oil. Like these are all seeds, basically, pits
yeah.
that come from trees. So there's, it'd be interesting to look at. And I don't know if the printed version has any kind of notes like this, where they found that they looked at, I don't know, expense accounts from a 16th century Transylvanian merchant and found the presence that they had in their household olive oil or almond oil or walnut oil or something like that, right? Like that's the kind of peripheral sources that one can utilize to fill in the gaps that these cookbooks invariably lead. Because yeah, you're right, tree oil. Well,
Yeah.
that's a big category.
Yeah, I
But
actually
that's
just checked, and the translator's glossary says tree oil, most likely olive oil imported from Italy, and then says several of the recipes herein are said to be from Italy call for tree oil. Walnut oil is mentioned separately. So I'm like, okay,
got it.
that's
Okay,
yeah, that's pretty
cool,
good.
awesome,
Most likely, so
fantastic.
not guaranteed a direct translation, but that was their best guess.
No, it's, and
So
that's exactly. So, and now in my world, I'd be like, now I need to go find some merchant records or something
yeah.
to really, to the receipts. Like I'm a receipt girl. I like to see the receipts. So I'm always excited when I find some primary source that actually underpins my reasonable assumptions, right? Because often we
Yeah.
do have to make reasonable assumptions, but I love it when my reasonable assumption is actually proven by a document, which is, I don't know
Yeah,
why, that makes me so happy.
I've had that happen once, where I just sort of used my gut to make a decision about a substitution, and then found the original, the closest translation anyway that I could find, and the other version, the original one, was
Mhm.
closer to what my gut said than what it had been like when it had been translated and revised and stuff. It was closer, and I was like, yeah, nailed that too. Felt really
Nice.
good.
Nice. Yeah. See, doesn't that feel so good?
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah. So
It
that
really
little that
does.
little dopamine hit, like, I have successfully done a thing, and I was right, and that's gonna go directly to my head, and, um, yeah, yeah, it's a lot of
So,
fun.
the these Transylvanian recipes, what were there any other than the preponderance of fish, which is surprising to most modern people coming from the Americas, right? Coming from the US or Canada. Nearly always the thing that surprises them most when they start reading these recipe collections is, wow, there's a lot of fish dishes. But other than that, what other surprises, good or bad, were awaiting you when you started looking through these recipes?
So, one of the things, when I did this feast, I was doing just going off this cookbook because that's what I found, and I didn't have a lot of time. So I was like, I'm going to challenge myself to just everything has to come from this. I'm not doing a bunch of additional research into what things were like in that area, or
Right,
other cross reference. I'm like, oh, this is it. If I've been given only this textbook and nothing else, this is all I have to work with.
right,
And what I was surprised most by was how little cheese was included. The
right.
cheese was a big surprise for me. They mentioned turo, like a Hungarian, like a farmer's cheese, like a dry cottage
Hmm.
cheese kind of.
Hmm.
And they mentioned cottage cheese, and that's it. They didn't have, like, I
Okay.
tried I tried searching the word cheese, I tried searching dairy, I tried searching a bunch of different cheese names, like pretty much everything I could think of, and just nothing. So I kind of came up with a couple of different explanations just in my own justification of why that would be, because our kingdom's culture, Abacal feasts, it is really, really, really standard to have like a bread and flavored butters and cheeses course as your first
Right.
course of the feast. And I was like, if I don't do that, they're gonna riot. Like I'm gonna have an angry, angry, angry kingdom on my head if I don't do the breads and cheeses. So I gotta find some cheese somehow to make sure that I don't get run out of town. Because just
Right.
this is a
Right.
standard. This is a part of our culture. You do breads and cheeses at the beginning, and if I take that away, I don't know how it's gonna go. So I was looking for cheese. I really wanted to justify it. Um,
Right.
and uh, and we did do the turo. I had a friend that was a little bit more specialized, was able to put that together for me. That's just something she's familiar with, and I was really thankful. She did an amazing job. And then I was thinking about it. And I was like, there could be like a separate cheese master. Like maybe there's somebody else who is in charge of the cheese, does all of the cheese, and this cookbook author didn't touch it. But I
Right.
was like, I
Right.
feel like that's not super likely because he wrote everything down. And if there had been cheese involved, if he'd cooked with the cheese would have showed up somewhere.
So
And
now that makes me want to. So even if you weren't, so that makes me want to go grab one of the Neapolitan recipe collection, because it has menus in it, and I never thought to look at the menu in terms of, does it mention, like you say, like we would call modernly an appetizer platter, right? Does it talk about an appetizer platter? Because in the 15th century English book of etiquette called the Book of Nurture, written in about 1460, it talks specifically about table service, and that is where you get the details on all those little extras. So it was the person who was arranging the table service and overseeing it, whose job it was to make certain that all these little appetizers were available. And that's where they mention things like cheese.
hmm,
So it wouldn't surprise me, at least in terms of cheese that's not built into a recipe, if
Yeah.
that does not fall within the cook's purview, actually, because
Yeah.
your initial instinct was probably right, that that was someone else's department. That was not the cook's department. Just like in most kitchens, a pastry chef was a different job, and that's why these cookbooks rarely include pastry recipes, because that wasn't the cook's job. That was the
Yeah.
pastry chef's job.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if that's not the case. Now, why cheese might not be included in the recipes might be because they didn't use cheese they just didn't have food with cheese in it, like dishes with cheese in it.
That was what I landed on because
Yeah,
because of how detailed he was in other things as a kitchen entries, that there
yeah,
wasn't cheese is pretty slim. Like, he even has throwaways for, like, if they're sick and they can't eat, they at least will have this. Like, there's a lot
right,
of little, like, other bits, and I was like, "If there was nothing, that tells me that there just wasn't cheese." And I was like,
right,
I could do a bunch of digging, like, because I know that there's definitely a variety of cheeses that existed in other places, and in that time period. And so instead of doing a bunch of extra digging, I just justified it with, like,
right,
here's how I'm gonna get through this feast without doing a bunch of extra work right now. I'm running out of time. And I was like, you know what? This isn't just your average, like, noble's banquet. This isn't a everyday cook. This is a prince. Like, this is
right.
royalty. And I was like, you know what? He's too rich for cheese. Like,
Yep,
why would he make things out of the byproduct of his goat when he could just kill the goat and have a new goat? Like, that's what the poor people have to do, is they have to make do with the goat when he's a prince, he could just buy a new goat. And so that was the justification I went with. And I was like, I'm just going to assume that this guy was too rich for cheese. He doesn't need the byproducts of the animals because he can just get more animals. So it just wasn't on his menus very much. And we move forward with that. So I did
right.
find
Yeah,
some goat cheeses on sale, that I included because I was like, there would have been goat cheese. It would have existed. Somebody made cheese out of the goat that they had, even if it's not
yeah,
mentioned in the cookbook, just to keep from there being a riot on my hands. And so I was like, there's some cheese on the table, but we're not doing lots of it. That's not how we're running things here.
right.
And then I was like, these are the sorts of things. I'm like, I'm gonna message the contestant. I'm gonna find out what the actual answer is more likely to be than just the thing that I came up with, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So in that part of the world, in Transylvania, the cheeses that are there now, there's a lot of goat cheese and a lot of sheep's milk cheese, and that was no doubt the case in the Middle Ages as well, because cows take a lot of pasture. This is something a lot of modern people, we take it for granted that there's just thousands of square miles on which we can graze cattle. That wasn't
Yeah.
that wasn't the case in most of medieval Europe, in fact. So most cheese in medieval Europe seems to have been made from sheep and goats, with a smaller proportion of it being made from cow's milk. And your mileage would vary drastically based on your region, like the specific circumstances of your region, and the kinds of animals that you had, the kinds of pasture land that you had. Like England, this shocks people when I tell them that it is more likely that cheese from cheddar in England would have been, in medieval England, would have been sheep's milk. That there's a shift in the 17th century in England to cattle grazing, to cattle herding instead of shepherding, because the before that there were lots of small farms, lots of little small farms. And then in the 16th century, they passed the Enclosure Acts that literally take the land from these small landholders, these sharecroppers, and they consolidate into the hands of the wealthy and the powerful. It's one of the start of modern poverty, actually. And yeah, I know, yay. And it's called the Enclosure Act because they literally enclose these massive fields in fencing. And they basically create these massive pastures, and suddenly there's enough room to increase the herd size of the cows. And so now they can have thousands and thousands of cows. And so now there's a lot more milk from cows available than there is from sheep. And so in the 17th century in England, there's this massive shift in cheese being made from sheep's milk to being made from cow's milk. Whereas I don't think that shift really ever happened in Transylvania. So, it's not that they don't have cows. They do have cows, but they still have just as many, if not more, sheep and goats.
Yeah.
So in the Middle Ages, my feeling is that it was very likely that your cheese would have been sheep or goat's milk, probably more likely goat's milk.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so that
yeah.
was what we went with, partly just because that was what was on sale, and I was like, "Oh, that'll work," and I just added it to the menu, and partly because I was like, "This is as much thought and justification as I'm putting into this. I've got other things that I'm working on for a starter, and like I said, there's so many options in this in the cookbook that I was like, I can do four more of these and never repeat a recipe once. So I have time,
Right.
possibly in the future, in a couple years. I'm hoping I won't hopefully not doing another one in the next year because it was a lot.
Is
But
exhausting. Yeah, well, especially the way
oh
you did it with like just 2 months to
yeah,
spare for planning. So yeah, so
yeah.
everyone who's just joining, we are talking today. Welcome to my medieval cooking party. I'm the creative Contessa. Double tap that screen if you're enjoying and consider subscribing. I'm here with Katie, who just did a whirlwind 16th century Transylvanian inspired feast based on a 16th century Transylvanian cookbook, and she only had 3 months to prepare. So she went from no knowledge of Transylvanian food to producing this feast for 120 people in 3 months. So this is quite a feat, since most people spend at least 6 months researching and planning these things, and generally they don't start from zero. They start from, I already know about 15th century Neapolitan cuisine. Let's put a menu together and do something, right? So you should be very proud of yourself, Katie. This is an insane undertaking worthy of the Contessa. um,
Yeah,
um,
nobody would ever accuse me of going small
uh,
on any of my projects. Really, it's I kind of have one mode.
go go
Um,
go big or
so,
go home, right? Go big or
yeah,
go home, baby. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm with
yeah,
you.
yeah.
So we
All
had
of
a
my
good
big
question.
undertakings are. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, we had a good question. Yogurt. So fermented dairy, cultured dairy obviously plays a big role in Eastern European, Southern European cuisine now, Eastern and Southern European cuisine. And they eat lots of yogurt in other parts, but like it's built baked into the recipe, sour cream, yogurt, that kind of thing. Were there any recipes that called for cultured dairy? Cultured dairy,
So there was a lot of things that just said dairy and kind of left it, but like it didn't specify cheese and stuff. Well, you know what? Not even a lot, like a few, which was again a surprisingly small amount compared to what I was expecting based on my last experience doing a big feast was German in the same time period, and
right?
there was cheese options forever, and certainly not as many this time. So there was a few that just said with dairy, but a lot of the time that looked more like butter and more more like maybe a milk was in it, and it was often being
Right.
cooked into things. So
So not
yeah,
so, but no explicit mention of yogurt in that you encounter.
not that I remember.
Right.
And now somebody's probably going to grab the cookbook and be like, "Oh, here's four of them," but that just wasn't what I
No, no, no.
specifically
It's
looked for. It wasn't one of the words that popped up in my searches. So
right.
um,
So speaking of the cookbook, you have a print copy of it now, you said?
I do now. Yeah,
Could you
it
could you
was.
could you just hold that up for everyone so
Yeah,
they can?
yeah. So it's called the Science of Cooking, and it was a medieval Transylvanian cookbook. Some reenactors. I'll double check the year here. Yeah, 2018. It was it's been translated into Hungarian, and then in 2018, some reenactors crowdfunded together to get it translated into English
Nice.
for all of us nerds that don't speak Hungarian and would like to still make these things.
which is
So
which is
yeah.
most of the world, by the way. Not many people speak Hungarian
Yeah.
outside of Hungary. So
Yeah, so it's neat because the online versions that I was finding, and I just went to my web browser search and just put in the name of it, the Science of Cooking Transylvanian Prince Transylvanian Cookbook or whatever, and it like
right,
bunch of options popped up, and the online
nice,
version, they talk about how it is kind of an ongoing project, and how as they learn about what this probably, because the translator that they crowdfunded to pay wasn't a reenactor that was like interested in the history. They were just doing straight translation. It
right,
was
right,
exactly like this is what the words say and not what I think
right.
the words mean. And so
Yeah,
now the reenactors are sort of going through and like, oh, this is probably what they meant. Here's how
editing
it.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, and so
yeah.
it's
So
probably still ongoing. And then
yeah,
the one link that I found that I was going through said that I could order a print copy, and I was like, yeah, all right, I need that
nice.
my trophy case, essentially, of cookbooks and projects and that sort of thing. I was
So
like, this was
so
a
I
big undertaking.
I definitely, so I love having both, right? I love a print copy and I like a digital copy. The
Mm,
digital copy for the reason you said, because I can do easy searches when I'm looking for something specific. But
yeah.
then I like a print copy because I do enjoy just opening. I love the feeling of real books in my hands.
Yep.
I love I love the smell of the glue that binds the pages to
Mhm.
the spine. I like the feel of the paper as I flip through it and read through it, but I also really just like reading through it like a book,
Yep.
right? Like, and I like to do like what I call luck good luck reading, where I just pick up the book and I just open it and I just read whatever
It's fun.
wherever I've
Yeah.
accidentally opened and I just read from there, right? But you can't, it's not as easy to do that with a digital text.
Yeah.
It's definitely more fun. So I like both. And I love that there is a digital copy. That is it on Google Books? Is that, or yeah,
I found the first website that I found was, it was called Fiber Geek, and it was like the blog, and then they linked to it in the blog. And
nice.
I don't know where all, like, I was able to purchase it through there. They had the link in that Fiber Geek page, and I'm sure it's
Right.
available other places. But I just ordered direct from the
Nice.
reenactors that put this project together. So yeah, so that was where I found it. It probably exists other places, but I had gone from, and the recipe that had me stumble upon this was from tasting history. So people that
Right.
have tasting history already, or watch that channel, they've probably already seen at least one menu from this cookbook.
Right.
And
Right.
and might be familiar with that one, and that one was a hit. Like the garlic harvester sauce that we did, was the only
Yeah. So
complaint I had was that there was so much food before it. People were eating it under duress because they're like, this is delicious and I want to put it in my body, but I'm already full. And so they were eating it and like, why do you do this to
oh
me,
my
Katie? And
god.
that was the complaint.
Okay.
But
So I'm just gonna defend you right now. Okay, peeps. Look look into my
okay,
eyes.
all right.
Do not shove your face full of bread and cheese if it's the first course put out at a
That's what I
feast.
told them.
Have a tiny bit to stave off the initial hunger. And then each course, eat little bits of each course. That is how you eat courses.
So I'm
God,
going to go on a
what?
tangent directly related to that. So what that is why this turned in one of the reasons this turned into such a big project, and why I wrote out my actual notes and sort of turned this into an arts project instead of just a feast that I was serving to people. Um,
Right, right,
so in our kingdom, our group, our community, there are two main ways that you see feasts being served. Every time,
right,
that's just sort of what is traditional for us. One is buffet style, depending on the menu and depending on the size of the feast and what we're doing for that event. Buffet style, call up a table at a time, people rotate through.
right,
And then the other one is courses, and so you'll be sitting at your table of 8 people or whatever. There'll be 100 people on board for feast in the hall, and they will announce a course, and it'll have two, three, four different dishes on it. And somebody from your
right,
table will get up, go to the kitchen and grab a platter of this food, or grab the bowls or whatever, and bring that back to your table. And then you've got these on and then there's 15, 20 minutes, and everybody eats the food that's there. And then the dirty dishes go back to the kitchen, and they announce the next course. And that's how it's typically
right,
done.
right,
And so I was thinking through my courses. I'm like, all right, what are we going to do? We're going to end with that. For sure, that beef is going to be in the last course, because that's going to be the star. That's the main. That's the one that everyone's going to be talking about.
right.
And our culture in our kingdom is very breads and cheeses to start, breads and flavored butters and sort of nibbly bits. And
Always.
so I was like, I got to include that. And as I was looking through, so I just was bread, Control F bread, and started looking for every single reference to bread, because I wanted to see what kinds
Right,
there were. I was like, are we doing, is this fancy enough that we're doing white breads? Is this something where we're doing something that's more like a sourdough? Is it going to be a rye? Like what kind of breads do they have, so I know what to put on my starter dish? And as I was looking at the breads all the way through this cookbook, and I think I looked at every single mention of the word bread and went through all of them. What I was stumped on was that I couldn't find a single reference, even in the author's little throwaway bits. There wasn't a single reference to just eating bread with cheese, eating bread with butter, eating the bread. Like, it just didn't exist. all of the references were you put the bread in your pot and you cook it with your meat and then you throw it out. Or you put
Yep.
the bread in your pot and you cook it with the meat and then you mash it down into the sauce. Or you take slices or cubes of bread and you fry them in butter or oil and you're going to put them in the bottom of your plate and then you put all your meat and your sauce on top of it. And so like all
Right.
the way through, bread was a tool. Bread was used to sop up your sauces. Bread was used to change the texture of the dish. Bread was used as like a crouton or a crostini, but it wasn't,
Right.
you didn't just eat the bread. And even
Yep.
in those sections where he talked about if somebody is really, really sick and they can't eat anything, they can't do anything for themselves, even in those sections, he didn't even have at least get them to eat bread with butter. Like, and this guy wrote everything down. So I was like, they just didn't do it. Like, I have no evidence that they just ate the bread. Bread was a tool. And so I
Yeah.
was like, I can't just do a bread course at the beginning because I have no justification for that. That's normal for us, but
Yep.
I can't prove it, and I'm going for accuracy here wherever I can. Um,
Right.
and then all the way through everything else, I was finding it all overlapped, and it had like everything had to do with each other. The same dressings on the vegetables were the ones mentioned on the salads, and the
Right.
sauces as they're talking about it for the meat is the same. They're like, and this is the same as the cucumber. Like, everything had to do with each other. And so I was like, this is all meant to be little bites that you mix and match. The bread
Right.
that I put on your table at the beginning of the feast needs to still be there at the very end because you're supposed to be using it. And so I changed up how we did it instead of doing courses. And this is why it turned into such a big project. Is we got a whole bunch of really wonderful volunteers who I couldn't have done this without, to be dedicated servers through the whole feast. So not people who were participating in the feast experience coming up one
Right.
one course at a time. I had people that were just serving the whole time, and we did every 2 or 3 minutes another dish came out of the kitchen, and it was a constant rotation of food. And you'd pass
Right.
around, you pass the dish around your table, and anything that you put your little bit on your plate, anything in your bowl or the platter that was left, went onto. I had an empty platter in the middle of the table, and I was like, "That's your leftovers platter. You put the
Ha.
rest onto your leftovers platter so that 4 dishes from now, if you want a little bit more of the beans or something, you can take a little bit more, but that dirty
Right.
dish goes right back to the kitchen. So we're not dealing with 12 or 14 dishes on your table that you have to work around. Everything is everything's cleared away right away. But that way you can do little bites, little tastes, and mix and match all the way through. And so I warned
Right.
everybody, don't fill up on bread. That bread's supposed to still be there at the end. Use it for mixing and matching. And they didn't listen to me. And a bunch of people were full anyway. I also made way, way too much food, which does happen. But like mostly it's because they didn't listen to me. Is what I'm telling myself, is they all ate too much bread at the beginning. So
Yeah. So I've just got a couple of questions. So I'm grinding cinnamon to answer the questions. It's not that it's stinky. When you grind cinnamon, it sends up a fine dust, and you should not inhale it. You will get fibrosis in your lungs. Right. So when you grind things and it creates a dust, you should wear a mask to protect your lungs from, because if you cook like I do all the time and you inhale all these powders, you're going to end up with some kind of pulmonary issue. So it's not that it smells bad, it smells great, but I don't want to develop emphysema from cinnamon dust. So that's what I'm grinding. I'm grinding. So there was a question, what am I making? I am making a white ravioli from an unpublished 15th century Neapolitan source. It's a manuscript in the Piers Point Morgan Library in New York. And it is a ravioli recipe that has no dough. It is literally the best part of the ravioli. It's the filling. And we're using mozzarella cheese, which I've ground up. That's what I was doing in the big mortar, ground up and added saffron to it. So it has that beautiful color. I've added some ground ginger, and now I'm just grinding the cinnamon from cinnamon stick to add to it. And it's got some egg white in it. Oh, I've got to add some butter to it. And then we'll make it into little finger dumplings. It actually says to make them shaped like fingers. We'll roll them in some flour and then we boil them. So
like a cheese
it's a,
gnocchi almost, or no gnocchi,
yeah,
or
yes.
yeah, like
So
that.
so interestingly, so no, because they have the word gnocchi.
Oh, okay.
They have gnocchi. Gnocchi is also another kind of dumpling. They literally call this white ravioli, and then it's very clear that there's a difference between ravioli and gnocchi. So I think gnocchi refers to the shape.
Okay,
Like it's a
interesting.
specific kind of shape. So it's not just a general word for dumpling. It's like a specific shape of dumpling. And then ravioli also is another kind of dumpling, if you think about it. Some people
Yeah.
view them as pastries, actually, also. So, but there is actually in modern Italian cuisine a ravioli that also has no dough wrapping, and that's called ravioli nudi, naked ravioli. So
Cool.
this is a very old idea apparently, and I love it because I gave up wheat a long time ago, and I mostly don't eat grains except for rice because in Korea, if you don't eat rice, you would probably starve to death. Um, but I love it when I find recipes that I don't have to massively modify medieval recipes, that I don't have to modify massively to accommodate my wheat-free existence. So
Mm.
yeah, which like you were saying though with bread, man, bread is used very heavily in all of these upper class recipes, as you say, as a thickener. And that's not just true in Transylvania, that's true in Italy, in France, in
Yep.
Germany, in England, in Spain, right? They're all using bread as a thickener. And it's for the upper class or as plateware for trenchers. For the upper
Yeah.
classes, bread, you're right, bread does not seem to be a course in and of itself. It seems to be a component in other dishes, which which is not to say that at the we'll say the bottom 80% of society probably did have a bread course. I've seen depictions of shepherds, 15th century shepherds eating lunch, and they're out in the field and they've got a big loaf of bread and they've got, believe it or not, a bowl of milk, and
Yeah.
they're eating bread and milk. And it wouldn't surprise me, considering they're shepherds, if they, I guess it makes sense now that I think about it, they probably got the milk from a
Yeah.
ewe that they were tending to, right? And
Yeah.
so they are eating just bread and milk. And but that seems to have lower class implications if you're just eating just
Yeah.
bread, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they anywhere it talked about um, using the bread and like mashing it up, that kind of thing. I got gluten-free bread from the store and turned it into breadcrumbs and used only gluten-free breadcrumbs throughout. So that was one of the ways
Right,
that I was able to cook for 120 people and still keep all of my celiac or gluten intolerant guests able to eat as much as possible. Some people
right,
choose to
right,
do they'll do a feast and they'll have separate portions of dairy free this or gluten free this or nut free this or
right.
whatever, and I am too lazy for that, honestly. Like I just I'm just gonna make it the same way for everybody, and I try to make sure that like I'll do all gluten free throughout, as much as possible. I'll do dairy free throughout. I'll do just no nut, no fish, anything like that on my menu. And then if there's a more obscure allergen, I guess, like not one of the main
Right,
allergens,
right,
I try to have enough variety in the dishes that you could just exclude the dish that includes that thing you can't eat, and you still have had a full meal. So that people are like I have enough vegetables and enough sides that somebody who is vegan or who is vegetarian can just not eat my two main dishes, and they are still full. Is
right.
always the goal that I'm going for
So
here.
do you have I've worked with many cooks over the years. One of them will just make specifically like, because in the European groups we don't have as many out. It's usually just one or two people.
Mm.
And so she wouldn't make all the dishes special, but she would make a couple of the key dishes in each course special. So are there just that many more allergens that you're dealing with in your group?
I would say so. Like I guess it depends on how people are doing their feasts. Like I know some groups will say, like I'll see posts about like feast day and they're making feast for 12 people. And I'm like, "Oh,
Right,
oh, okay, that's a completely different culture than when we say feast." We're talking about like I set my limit at 100 people. There's often a wait list, not always, but often a wait list for those 100 spots.
right,
Plus there's the head table, and then I have my I call it my oh crap platter, or the the extra dish that I have, so that if somebody walks out of the kitchen, trips and spills it all over the place and we have none left, we have that
right,
oh crap, grab the extra platter, hand it to that server, day is saved, go. And if we don't
right.
use that, then that is what the kitchen team eats at the end. So I'm
Right.
planning for about 120 people for my feast for 100. And in that 120, I would say I probably of the people that registered in advance, I had probably about 10 who had some version of celiac or gluten intolerance.
Hmm.
I had probably 3 or 4 dairy allergies, 3 or 4 nut allergies, or like, or a specific nut, like the
Hmm.
depending on what how it was written, and then um, maybe 5 or 6 that said something about garlic and onion, and I had to have a conversation, be like,
Oof.
respectfully,
Yeah.
this is probably not the feast for you. Like,
Yeah.
this is, I am very, very sorry, but like, I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
very few dishes that have neither of those options. And so that was a hard one. And then a couple of
Yeah.
like more obscure ones, like a specific spice or something like that, where it was like, okay, I just won't include anything with that thing and we're fine. But yeah, we do have a lot, and our group has been very vocal about trying to be more accommodating and trying to be more respectful and trying to be safer about that is something that we're really
Uh,
pushing for right now. And so I
it's
think we're
it's
seeing an
just
influx of people that feel comfortable speaking up about it and saying, actually, yeah, like dairy hurts my tummy, and I'm okay saying it instead of just suffering, so I don't bother the
right.
feast steward. And I think that's a good thing. So I'm willing to do an entire feast where we use margarines and oils instead, or where we have enough options that a vegetarian person can just not have meat at all and still have a full feast, or where I use gluten free everything. And that is not going to diminish the
Hmm.
experience for the people that don't have the allergy, but it does enhance the experience for the people that do. And that's really important to me. So,
Right. I guess I just because it just sounds like you have many more people with intolerances or allergies than the groups I'm used to. There's usually like 3% of the people of the attendees have that issue if at a large number. So we just generally
yeah,
make a couple of extra dishes
yeah,
for them
which
rather than
is,
completely modifying the whole thing. But
yeah,
it
and
sounds
that's
like you're
something that
dealing
some
with
of our
larger
stewards
numbers.
do. Yeah, some of our stewards
Yeah.
do choose to have, there's a gluten-free portion available or there's a nut-free portion available. I don't know if it's laziness or if I'm doing it the hard way. I don't know, but I just prefer to try to keep the entire feast safe for as many people. It's also probably just I'm really anxious all the time, and I'm like, what if people don't sign up for the feast and I made all this food and nobody comes? So I just want to
I think
expand as many people as possible are going to be able to eat this and just eliminate the reasons why they can't sign up. And so far it hasn't been a problem, but that's probably just some of that internal monologue of like, oh no, what if? So
yeah, I suspect it wouldn't be a problem. Yeah, so
probably not, but like I don't want to test that theory. So
so what are the character what are some of the characteristics of these recipes? Like um lots of spices, I'm tossing I don't know. I'm asking. Lots of spices, lots of garlic, lots of onions. Like are there some general overriding characteristics? Because in Western Europe, I'll give you an example, very much most of the upper class recipes are full of what we would now call exotic sweet spices, cinnamon and nutmeg and cloves and
yeah.
mace and galangal and grains of paradise and cubebs and cinnamon flowers. All of these things that are missing now mostly from European cuisine were heavily used in haute cuisine in the Middle Ages. Lots of wine, lots of sweet and savory and sour combinations. Those are things that characterize pretty much all of the recipes in Western
Mhm.
Europe across the Middle Ages. So are there characteristics like that that kind of bind these recipes together?
So I was focusing on like lots of garlic. I was like Transylvanian feast, vampire feast. Like I was like, we're gonna lean into all the tropes is what's happening here. And so I leaned into garlic. I found a lot of recipes that include that. There was
Hmm.
definitely a lot of onion. Ginger was another one of the main spices that was used, which is
Right,
I think a lot of people don't consider that as much a savory as like something you put in a sweet
right,
dish. That's
right,
something that
right,
that really like when I added ginger, like the mushroom dish that I did, had a lot of
right.
it's salt and then sugar and ginger, and I'm like, that's not how we make mushrooms in
You're right. It is
21st
not.
century Canada. Like that,
Right.
it's not a common spice. And so as soon as we added even just a little bit of ginger, people are raving about the mushrooms. I'm like, I did very little work for these. I'm glad you liked them, but the difference is just a different flavor you weren't expecting. Not that I
Right.
really worked very hard on those. So that made me really happy
That's
that was well
awesome.
received. I was surprised at um, how many of the recipes didn't seem complicated
Right.
compared to what I've seen in other medieval recipes where it's like there's a
Hmm.
whole bunch of steps to this and you're going to do it this way and then you have to let it rest for a day and then you're going to come back and you're going to do
Right.
this thing. I've seen that in other cultures, but this one was a lot of like, put it in the pot, add these spices, serve it. Put it in the pot, add this, serve it. And I was like, this is great. That's exactly what I need when I'm in a rush. I need a bunch of dump and go recipes where I can just toss everything into the pan or the pot, stick it in the oven, and it's going to come out and then it's done. Like, I was so
and
happy with that.
so sometimes you do find simple recipes like that in the Western European sources, so in the French and English and Italian
Yeah.
sources. But then when you start reconstructing the recipe and actually trying to make it, you realize that steps have been left out and you have to interpolate them into the recipe.
Yeah.
Was that the case in any of the recipes where it seemed simple, but then you realized to make this successfully, we'd have to do a little bit more?
A little bit. There was a few, like I said, I had to use a lot of these recipes as like inspiration, and then I was finding modern recipes and tweaking them just because I didn't have unlimited time to do lots of test recipes. It had to
Right.
be a lot of things that I was like I just don't have the amount of time between now and the actual feast to test all these. Some of them were going to go in blind, and I need to be able to cook them and just trust that it's going to be good.
Right.
And so yeah, so for a few of those, I had to just use a modern recipe that we trusted, and so that helped take some of the surprise out of it. Some of the
Right.
sauces were more involved than I expected, and
Yeah.
that
Can
was
you give a specific example?
so there was one again one of my Franken recipes where I used like six different recipes from this cookbook and turned it into one sauce instead. um
Right.
and uh and it was there was a bunch of names for it. There was a raisin It was raisin sauce, it was fruit sauce, it was bird sauce. I wasn't going to call it bird sauce because I thought that somebody would be very confused about what the bird sauce is. um
Was it
and
a sauce? Should it have been a sauce for birds? Is that probably why it was called that?
it was served with bird. It was served with hen. It was served with goose,
Got
like
it.
that sort of thing. So they
Got it.
it was the bird sauce.
Got it. Yeah.
And yeah, but it was also like there's fruit sauce. And again, I sort of put a bunch together to turn it into. But it was starting with frying up the onion uh, in the pan with the olive oil and then adding the breadcrumbs to thicken it up a little bit, turn it into a
Right.
bit of a roux, and then we added apples and grapes and deglazed with
Mm.
a non-alcoholic white wine because I had one or two people that were allergic to alcohol and I didn't want to risk that it wouldn't be cooked out. Yeah, oh I know. Again, I
Oh my God.
love that people
I would
feel comfortable telling me.
I would have just told them don't eat the sauce. I mean,
Yeah,
God.
and that's an option too, but I was like, I can also just get a non-alcoholic one and not worry about it. And so
So yeah,
that was really
where I am, I can't get non-alcoholic wine. That's not a thing.
fair. Yeah, yeah, very
that's
very
that,
different
that's
options. So
that's not a thing.
yeah.
um,
So deglaze with the white wine and then put in more of the spices and then put in the veggie stock. That was another substitute that I made that was pretty easy. Is like anywhere it said beef stock or chicken stock or the sauce or whatever, I would just use veggie stock because that way, if I was making a carrot dish and it needed veggie stock or if it needed stock or whatever, somebody who was vegan or vegetarian could eat that one and it didn't have meat in it, even though it was a vegetable dish. So that was it. I was
right.
like, it's not really going to change much if if we use vegetable stock instead of beef stock here. We're gonna go with it. Um, and so yeah, so add all of that together, and then it was supposed to be like boil it down. And the combination of sauces, the first time I made it, I was melting down in my kitchen because I was like, this is awful. This is disgusting.
Oh,
Everyone's gonna hate
really?
it. My face is gonna be a disaster. It was so bad. And like my poor partner came upstairs, like, are you okay? I'm like, no, it's disgusting. Everything's gonna go so bad. It's just a mess. And eventually I was like, I think it needs more of the sweetness. I started adding like some of the other things all referenced in the recipe or the recipes. I was still looking at my giant ingredients list and putting together the combination
Right.
of what's the dish I want to, or what's the sauce I want to make out of this. And I was sort of like mashing up the apples and the grapes that were in there, because I was like, I think it needs to just let that juice out more. It's not getting
Right.
the sweetness that I want. And
Right.
eventually it was late, we were hungry, we were grumpy, and so we just tossed it into the blender, and we're like, we're gonna just see what happens, and like we'll get all that out. And then I was fully planning to throw that sauce away when I was done. I was like, this was a failure. And then we put it on the chicken, and after having blended it and gotten all that sweetness
Mm,
fully incorporated, and then
right.
paired with the chicken and sort of that fattiness as like a delivery system, all of
Right.
a sudden it was really good. If I just
Yeah.
tasted the sauce by itself, I was like, this is underwhelming at best. But then as soon as I put it with the chicken, we're like, this is amazing.
No,
And so, uh,
it's a sauce. It should be eaten. You're right. It's funny how
yeah,
that when you eat it in its context, which is in this case a topping for another thing or a
yeah,
dip for another thing, it completely changes it. Which is actually might be a mistake a lot of modern cooks make, where they taste the sauce and it's great as a sauce, by like as a thing that you eat on its own, and
yeah,
then they actually put it on the thing on which it should go, and they're like, this isn't good. Why isn't it good? It's because it's been changed by the food
yeah,
to which you added it, basically. So
yeah.
that's it's a
So
very practical observation, actually.
yeah, so we like mashing it was an option. Like it probably would have been ground or something in some way. And I was like, I'm
Yeah,
gonna be doing this in bulk.
it would have
Yeah,
been probably mashed in a mortar and pestle, or
yeah,
another set of instructions that we find a lot in medieval, in French and English and Italian sources, is put it through a sieve, strain
yes,
it,
yeah. I
right?
considered that too.
And
So
the way, and for those who don't know, what they mean is they would have, probably they're talking about a horsehair sieve, and it would have been a fine horsehair mesh, and you would put the concoction, the sauce, the mixture in it. And then you would actually take a spoon and you would actually press it through so that it actually food processes. This is the
yeah,
medieval equivalent of a blender, so that
exactly.
it actually processes it into a beautiful smooth paste.
Yeah.
And they did this to
So
all kinds of things, not just sauces. But did the recipe itself, see, this is what I think. This is what I was
it didn't say
suggesting, is
anything
that
about it.
they're
Yep.
yeah, but I'm going to
Yeah.
bet it's one of those secret steps that it assumed you would know to do, right?
Yeah, so I did it in the middle of my little meltdown, and it made it a lot better. Round two also went well. And so what I did for the actual feast, because I was like, I'm not gonna have time to like pour a giant pot into blenders. Like, that's a terrible idea. So I bought an immersion blender and we just blended it in the pot. And then I had extra chunks of apple cut up and extra grapes that were washed and ready to go that we tossed in for the last few minutes, so that there was still some visible fruit pieces in
Right,
this blended sauce.
right.
I am disappointed with the final result, just because kind of hit a time crunch and I accidentally plated some things out of order, and so it didn't thicken up and have quite as much of the sweetness as the test version. So I'm like, for
Uh,
everybody, like it wasn't as good as it could have been, and I'm
right.
really sad about that, because I was like, oh, the large scale version didn't match the vision, which, like, it happens. But
It
it's gonna
happens.
it's gonna haunt me for the while, or for the next long while, because I'm like, I know that could have been really good, instead of just like, yeah, and there was a fruit sauce. Like, it could have been like, did you try the fruit sauce?
All
And
right. Did you
and
did
they
you did you take your spoon and eat it straight out of the bowl? Yeah.
yeah, so I was disappointed about that, but it was a really neat experience when this sauce that I had fully given up on, because I thought it tasted so bad just in my tastes, that we put it on the chicken and we're like, oh, oh, this is really different. Like, just that fattiness, and then the delivery of the meat just was enough to temper some of the
Right.
intensity of the spices. And oh, it was a very different experience. It was super
Right.
cool.
Right. And a lot of medieval, so in upper class medieval cuisine, sauces are king, right?
Oh, there were so many.
All
Yeah,
all recipe collections. So the Transylvanian one also has lots of sauces, right?
so
So
many
all
sauces.
recipe collections have so many sauces. If it's, you can tell if it's aimed for an upper, if the target audience is wealthy, then there's
Yep.
lots of sauces, and that's because they ate a lot of roasts. And those roasts, do you know how medieval meat was roasted?
Was it the big fire oven, or was it different?
No ovens,
Oh,
spit
okay.
roasted.
Yeah. Spit roasted.
Spit
Yeah.
roasted.
Okay.
So it's spit roasted. So that means that you're not going to be able to add much flavor during the cooking itself. Like, you're not going to be able to slow braise it in
Mhm.
an enriched broth, right?
Yeah.
So the thing to do was to serve the roast carved, and there were little dishes with sauces, a variety of sauces, and you would actually dip the meat. The sauce wasn't served on top. You would dip your meat in the sauce because you're eating with your fingers, right? And
Yeah.
so these etiquette books actually have instructions for how medieval etiquette books tell you how to properly dip your meat in the sauce. And they say things like, don't stick your fingers in the sauce. Just dip the meat. Do not stick your thumb in the sauce. Do not, and there's actually one 15th century one actually says, don't lick your fingers and then stick your fingers in the sauce. Like,
That's something I really wish that a lot more people remembered now. Like, the fact
yeah,
that we still have to explain that to people is
yep.
devastating. But here we are.
Humans,
Yep.
humans
Humans,
will
we
human.
just don't change. On the note of the spit roast, there's a recipe in this cookbook, which I don't know if we need to go over it again for anybody that may have joined in the last little while, but I was using this one, the Science of Cooking, a Transylvanian cookbook from the 16th century. There's one recipe that talks about to cook a whole ox, and
Nice.
it is so neat. So it talks about how you're going to have to put it you're going to have to put a rod through its spine here. You're going to have to put nails here. You're going to have to wrap the hooves in cloth and keep those and like keep it moving. All this stuff,
Nice.
and it goes on and on and on about it. And it's this clear like to be able to serve this ox still standing, fully cooked, is the idea.
Right.
And then after this very detailed, very neat description of like, here is how you're going to make this absolute showmanship come together.
Right.
There he goes on a tangent, which again he decides to write down in his prince's cookbook. He goes on this tangent where he talks about I was sitting around at he names drops a famous person's wedding and like this person's wedding and I was there and I was hanging out with all of the masters of the kitchens for this person. Like it was so funny watching him just like list a bunch of names that you're obviously supposed to
Nice.
know who this is. These are important
Right.
people he's rubbing elbows with. And
Right.
and so I was sitting around and we're talking about it and talking about the different weddings that we've seen. And we talked about how this one, I'm going to get the order wrong here, but how somebody had served an ox that had a sheep inside, that had a goat inside, that had, or like whatever, like a medieval turducken,
Right.
with
Right.
multiple things stuffed inside, and how some of the other masters said that it was impossible because this wouldn't be cooked properly and this part would. But I know that it's possible because I was there and you're going to listen to me because I know what I was doing. And I was just like, this is so familiar. Like that was another spot where I was like, this is now very immersive, very familiar. This is every
Humans.
in our
Humans,
group.
right?
This is all of the knights sitting around talking about the stories of the battles that they've fought. This is the Laurels talking about the most impressive scroll that they've ever worked on. This is somebody talking about their best tournament fight. This is somebody like just bragging about their best speech that they made, had everybody in
Right.
tears, like whatever. I was like, this is that version. This is that
This
master.
is
Like,
the,
but
the,
I
the
know,
no
and I
shit, no
yeah.
shit there I was. They did
Exactly.
it.
Yeah. I
It's
was like, do we swear
possible.
on your live streams? But yeah, this is the no shit there I was stories. And you're
Yep.
sitting around the fire and you're talking about the most impressive thing you've ever seen or done and how everybody should listen to you because you know what's going on and you're telling your staff like you're gonna listen to me. Don't listen to these other people who say that
Right.
it's not possible, but I know it's possible because I was
I
there.
know them.
And and
Nice.
I was so enamored with that. That's why this went from originally I joked about how I said that I was gonna do a low spoons feast. I was gonna do not a ton of effort. I was going to buy a bunch of things pre-made. I was going to just so there was a feast, but I didn't have a lot of time, so we're going to throw something together.
Right.
And that didn't happen because I got so sucked into this cookbook and I was having so much fun being a part of this
Right.
experience and it felt like I was there. I'm like, I know that guy. I don't actually know that guy, but I know that guy and I know how he talks and I know how he trains his people and I know how he tells his stories of grandeur
Right.
and I know many of that guy. And all of a sudden I was there. I was that a staffer in this prince's kitchen learning from this guy. This is my resource, my textbook. This is all I have to work with. And that was
Right.
where it all came from. So it was really, really fun. But yeah, that ox on a how to serve a
Do
whole
you,
ox.
do you happen to have that recipe marked? Because I think it would be very interesting to hear that, to actually hear the
There you
original
go.
description for,
Um,
yeah,
it's a
because
little bit long, but it's
that's
totally
okay.
worth
That's
it.
okay. My people have attention spans. So if they're
Okay,
still
that's
here, they
fair.
have an attention span. So
Hold
let
on.
me just set the stage for those just joining. It gives you a chance to
Sure.
find the recipe.
Yeah, I'll bring
So
it up here.
everyone, welcome to my medieval cooking party. I'm the creative Contessa, and I'm here today with Katie, who has prepared in 3 months, put together a feast for 120 people based on a 16th century Transylvanian recipe collection written for a Transylvanian prince. So upper, very much haute cuisine. And we're just looking now at a detailed recipe on how to spit roast an ox,
Yeah.
which is almost as much mechanical as it is culinary. So Katie, do you have it?
Yeah, so this is the exact, and like I said, a little bit lengthy here, but
That's okay. Do it.
it's recipe number 53 if you happen to have the cookbook already. It says that the title is about cooking the whole ox. It says, "I must write about this for some do not know. If you want to cook
Mm.
the whole ox, use 4 skewers. The skewers should be sharp. You also must be able to rotate it on the fire. Once the ox is skinned, don't let them hit its head. Cut its throat instead, like they do with the lamb. Tell the butcher not to remove the horns and hooves. Make a few cuts so that he can take out its intestines, lung, and liver.
Wow.
Leave the kidney, but take out its bladder. Once they're in your hands, put the ox on the skewer. Cover its nails and horns with a wet cloth so it doesn't get burnt. Should this cloth become dry on the fire, pour some water on it. Nail it to the skewer so the ox doesn't move around on the skewer. Put nails especially in its spine. Put nails in its thighs, some in its back, and nail its legs so that it looks like it's lying on the table. Once it's on the
Wow.
skewer, add some salt on the outside and on the inside as well. Boil the
Ha.
ox's fat. Yeah, boil the ox's fat and
Nice.
boil a pot of salted water. Pour the water on the ox until the fat's not ready. I don't really know what that part means, but the fat's not ready.
I feel like that's a mistranslation, and it might be maybe until it's rendered. Maybe you're supposed to
Mm,
keep pouring the hot water over until fat has rendered out, like the big chunks of fat that might
that
still
would
be
make
there
sense.
rendered out.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
You must roast it for long, about 3 to 4 hours, for it has to be roasted nicely. Once it's done and you start to serve it, make a table from boards and put the ox on top. Put white bread on the table, 2 barrels of wine, and pots made of wood, and bring several spigots so that they can pour the wine from the barrels even if one spigot breaks. Take knives to the sides of the ox. If you wish to decorate it, gild its hooves and horns, and put the crest of your lord between its horns. This is good for weddings.
Nice.
Yeah. And then goes on to the second page and says, "I shall write some more about cooking that ox." And I was like, "Oh, I'm invested now." Like
Yeah,
he's like,
keep going.
yeah,
What more does he have to say?
he's
I
like,
want to
This
know.
is going to be a tangent." He's leading up to something, and he says, These are things I heard from my old masters. There were 40 or 50 masters at a lord's wedding, and once they were done with cooking, they sat down and started talking the trade. Then they started to talk about the ox. Master, I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Master Mihaly, the great Georgi Bebek's chef, said, "I saw Gabor Prinini's wedding." I'm so sorry.
Nice. No,
Um,
it's
and
okay.
and Master Antel cooked an ox, and like I'm just like he's just name dropping people because he can. Like I just love it. So Master Antel cooked an ox, which had a big sheep inside, which had a calf inside, and the calf had a big capon inside, or capon, the bird.
Yeah,
Um,
Capon. Yep.
Capon,
Yep.
yeah. Once it was done, he took out the capon, and if the capon was cooked, then so was the ox. Some chefs said that it is impossible. Some spice masters said it is possible since the ox is big and requires a great deal of time to be cooked properly. The animals
Right.
inside would cook, since the ox would act like a furnace, trapping all the heat inside. The master said that it is possible to prepare the ox in a way that it would stand and not lay. I will tell you how to achieve this. Have a long drill made, similar to what they used to carve guns, and the the footnote on guns says cannon were cast in one piece, then bored out by
Yep.
a long drill.
They
Um,
were. Yep.
Yep, the end should be clean steel. This should be as long as the ox, going from its hooves to its back, and fasten its legs with iron nails to the grate. Cover the legs
Wow.
with wet cloth so that the bones don't get burnt. The iron nails should be strong enough to fasten the ox to the grate. Should you wish to decorate it, then do it, or do so like I told you. I told you this because making roast beef requires knowledge. Then imagine what kind of knowledge making an ox requires. Should my lord ask for this, I would do it. It's just, and that was the whole recipe, and I was
Wow.
just enamored. I was like, there's so many details here and so many unnecessary
Oh my.
details that for him in that time would have been unnecessary. We like you can look up Georgie Bebek, like that's a real historical character. He's name dropping really famous
Right.
people. And
Right.
like, oh yeah, and we're sitting around at the wedding, and I know them, and I was talking to their cooks, and they told me how to do it, and it just
Wow.
Yeah, and if my
Well,
lord
I
wants
love
it, I would do it because I'm capable.
I mean, I just love the idea that he actually talks about, and I think he's talking about his master actually. So his
Mhm.
master, so he's reporting this secondhand. So his master did all this name dropping, right? But it's lovely to think about all of these cooks who are probably normally have employment in different kitchens, but probably for this big wedding, we're all brought together, right? And it's so fun to think about all these master cooks, these chefs basically, just sitting around talking, shooting the breeze, talking,
Yep.
bitching,
Talking the
kvetching,
trade. Yep.
talking the trade. That is
Yep.
such a human moment
Yeah, and
that
we
that
still do that. Like
we
celebrity
still do
weddings
that.
have the celebrity chefs and they have all their apprentices that come along and oh my goodness, I got to serve at, like whatever pop star's wedding. Like it still happens. And then we all finish our giant day, our big tournament, whatever, and then everybody sits around and talks about their big moments and their memories and
Yep.
the notion there I was. And it was just that was one of the recipes that really is like yeah, I'm all in on this. Like I'm still there. This is so immersive.
But
This is
but
so
but
real.
but also the details. I mean, we're talking. This is a
Oh yeah,
construction project. Have
absolutely.
have have a drill made that the kind of drill that would be used for boring cannon. So
Yeah.
it has to be the length of the ox. You're like, oh my god, and that it has to be steel. Now again,
The
linguist in me,
end
I'd
should
want to go
be
and see if it, yeah, the end should be steel. I would want to go back and see if that's a correct translation, because
mhm.
a lot of people don't realize steel in this era is not as common as iron is. Like, so to have a steel tip on your drill that's a real detail.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
and but that's like those are the kind of things I'm like this is a huge project and it was for a prince. Like that's where sometimes I would just justify my decisions like, yeah, but this was the prince. Of course we could do it. When I made
Right.
something with saffron and I'm like, oh, saffron's expensive and I feel bad because my home group is paying me back for all of the groceries. I don't want to. And then I was like, yeah, but this was a prince's meal. Like if it needs more saffron, they just put in more saffron. This is
Yeah,
like
they
that
did.
was yeah, and so all the
Absolutely.
way through, I was like, sorry to your wallets, everybody, but like this is supposed to be rich, so we're doing rich.
Supposed to
I,
be
I did,
rich, it should
yeah.
be.
I did a really good job of getting things on sale. Like I was absolutely crushing some of the sales and using like discount food apps and preparing things in advance because I was catching them when the price was good. Like I was really
Right.
proud of that. How I was able to manage the budget with some of the things being not super cheap. Like the roast itself was not a cheap cut and stuff. It was just
Right.
things that we had
Right.
to put together, and that's some of the complication of cooking for a big crowd instead of making a really nice dish for your closest friends and
Well,
family.
well,
But
and I think so. So for those who don't know, Katie was cooking for an organization called the Society for Creative Anachronism. And Katie, I'm going to tell you, having done living history with a bunch of different groups, the
mhm,
SCA actually has some unreasonable expectations on pricing. So,
yep.
and that they expect it to be too low, really. I mean, seriously, they do. And that comes in part because the SCA does a lot of events instead of like a few flagship events a year, where so that people can focus on more quality, less quantity. But the SCA tends to do quantity of events. So people
Mhm.
expect that every event should be really cheap so they can attend them all. But in the modern world, especially I don't know about Canada, in the US, grocery prices are
Oh, crazy.
skyrocketing.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's actually, I'll be honest, I think it's unreasonable to expect that a meal like that should be cheap. Like at a living history group in Europe, a feast like the one you've just described with all those dishes would be 100 euros a person just for the feast. Not
Yeah, I did get some of that feedback. I wanted to keep things as accessible as possible. We've got a lot of young players right now, a lot of like college students and stuff,
right.
and I was like, I don't want them missing out on the
Totally.
experience. And
Totally.
yeah, once I've sort of established the reputation of like, no, 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 whatever Katie says that you are paying for the feast, you're gonna get your money's worth. Like once I get that and there's some confidence in it, and I think that that's gonna help a little bit. I might be able to bump it up a tiny bit,
Right.
but I was also just super proud that I was able to keep it just over $20 a person, and
I
we
mean,
had
no,
like
you
14
should
courses.
be
Like,
amazed.
yeah,
You should be super amazed. I would say that I usually at events I run for just the feast, I usually apportion a budget of $25
yeah,
depending on where prices this year, I might have to bump up those prices, unfortunately.
yeah.
But and actually so 20 is not what I was expecting you were going to say. So in
Yeah.
the
Oh no,
US there are
I'm
people
So
there are
proud.
people who think they should be $5 or $10 a
Yeah.
person, and I'm like, there's no, you can't go to McDonald's for $10 a person. Why would you expect a medieval feast to be $10 a person?
Yeah.
That's not reasonable.
Yeah.
And some groups have come up with like scholarships, for lack of a better word, because it's not really
Yeah.
for scholarly purposes, but so that people who are, say, students or lower, not as high income,
Hmm.
have it, like, basically it's understood that people who know that they earn more will kind of help sponsor people on the lower end, so that
That's really
everyone
cool.
can still have a really nice feast. But it's also not, it's less, you put a lot of effort into pricing things. I can tell you probably spent hours and hours shopping and comparative shopping and keeping your eye on the sales, and I'm really impressed with that.
Yeah,
um
it
but
became my other full-time job for a little while. But again, I didn't have to go this hard. Like, I don't want anybody to be like, "Wow, the expectations in Avocal are obnoxious." Like, no, no, no. That's just me. Like, that's
you
the
you
what
you
I
did
did
this
to
to
myself.
yourself, did you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had intended to be. I had intended to do a much lower effort version of this feast until I fell head over heels in love with this cookbook and had so much fun that I was like, I can't.
Right.
I can't dial this back anymore. I have to. I'm trying so hard. Yeah, in the future, I'd probably price it at 30, and I did, like I said, I was so good with sales and getting things in advance, and different
Right.
ways that I was able to be sneaky about it.
Yeah.
That I probably do 30. But I still came in so very close to the budget that I'm really thrilled. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So a lot of people are agreeing with me on the cost.
Hmm.
There's one
Yeah.
person's like $20 a person. Sign me up. I'm bringing the whole family.
Well, so plug for Avocal. If anybody's in the SCA, Kingdom of Avocal is Saskatchewan, Alberta, Northwest Territories, and some little bits of BC. And yeah, we can throw a real party. We have a lot of fun. So if you're ever in the mood to travel, we have some really good events.
So that's a remarkably little bit of money. That is shockingly low.
Very,
Um,
very proud, and it was way too much work for any reasonable person to try to do that. So I would not advise that for anybody. I would say that was me being insane. Let me explain to you how you can do it easier than that. Just price it at 30 and do a little less obsessiveness with
right.
the sales and stuff. But
Right.
um yeah, no, but did some, like, even things like the bread that I did serve. I was able to get like a loaf at a time on sale for under $1 for a loaf, because it's like, well, this is a few days old now or whatever, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna freeze it, gonna wrap it really well, gonna freeze it, and then we're going to rebake it to warm up, and it's gonna
Right.
feel like we're eating fresh bread. And it
Right.
went really, really well. but
That's
a
Thank God
normal
for
person.
freezers, man.
Oh, yeah, no, I couldn't have done it without. I had to borrow freezer space from my friends because mine was full, beyond full, and I was still very far out from the event. I had 3 different people that helped me out by being like, "Yeah, you can use space in my deep freeze," and I had to come over with a few bags of things like, "Hey, I got all these carrots chopped and parboiled and ready to go, and now I have no room," and just filled their deep freezers for a month and a half. So it was,
Right.
yeah, it was a labor of love by a lot of people, which was
I
really wonderful.
Yeah, and I think so. For those who are wondering, well, how can we keep prices that low anyway? It's because the labor is all volunteer, right? The labor
Yeah,
is all volunteer. Mileage, Katie's not being reimbursed for mileage driving around, doing all this
no,
comparative shopping. She's
yeah,
not
no,
being,
this one
you know,
was
she's
bad for the environment.
right. She's not being
A lot of driving.
compensated for store, deep freeze storage in her fridge for months at a time. So yeah, it's when you have volunteers doing this kind of stuff, then you can keep the prices that low. I mean, seriously, if we were to actually pay professional cooks with a professional team to prepare the thing that you prepared, it would easily be $200-300 a person.
Yep,
Easily,
yep,
easily.
yep.
So that is the benefit of a volunteer organization. But I think, Katie, I honestly think a lot of people in these kinds of volunteer groups don't really appreciate, they appreciate it, but I don't think they appreciate it in the literal sense of really understand, unless
Hmm.
they've made one themselves, the amount of work that goes into this, the number of man hours that go into this, and that there are people volunteering those man hours for free.
Yeah,
So I think they underappreciate that.
Yeah, and I
Whether,
couldn't
you
have
know,
done it without my amazing team. Like I
yeah,
had some really phenomenal people that hopped in the night before and the day of the feast, and then all of the servers giving up their opportunity to sit and enjoy the feast in order to participate in serving in this way, which felt like a
right,
more accurate medieval way to do it, but wasn't
right,
necessarily how we typically do it in our group.
yeah,
And yeah, I was so thankful for all of them. There was people that were in the kitchen all day with me, chopping fruit and prepping
yep,
meat and getting the butters mixed up and like that sort of thing. So
right.
it yeah, it was really wonderful to see because if it had been just me, this would have failed dramatically. But
Yeah,
I
no, it's
also tried to do as much as I could where like I said, where it was just dump and go recipes. I'm like, okay, it mentions all these ingredients. We're gonna put it in the pot with the spices and we're just gonna let it do its thing. Whereas the last
right.
feast I did had a lot more involved things. Like we had like we made the sausages and we hand formed the cheese balls and like different things that we made that were much
Wow,
more like we
nice.
did stewed and mashed turnips, which is like okay, now we have to peel the turnips and boil or chop the turnips and boil the turnips and mash the turnips and mix in the spices, and that's a lot of steps. Whereas this time I'm like pears and carrots, chop them, dump them, put the spices in, cook, like done, dump it in the pot, done. And that
Yeah,
was
so
one of the ways that that worked. Was being able to keep it simple
well,
ish.
and simple, like simple. Okay,
Yeah, no, I
how
said
many
simple and
dishes?
like choked on that. Yeah.
How many dishes did you make for this feast?
Simple compare okay, hold on, let me actually do a count. I probably should have done that to start. The starter platter was probably 2 dishes on its own just because we had so many things on it. We ran out of room with the
Right,
different breads and the fruits and butters and cheeses and stuff. And then we had a pears and carrots dish, and then I had 3 different palate cleansers throughout the meal. So the salads that they described in this cookbook were all of the salads were 1 ingredient long. It was like
right,
cucumber salad, and then it was pretty much it was the exact same dressing all the way through, which was really nice. So I had them just as palate cleansers. It was meant to be just a couple of bites. And
right.
so we had a cucumber one, and then I did a mixed garlic mushrooms, and then a beetroot dish, pasta salad. Another one of the palate cleansers I did watercress, which was a
Oh,
little bit of
nice.
yeah, it was a little bit of a deviation from the cookbook a little bit. Watercress was mentioned, but it was mentioned as in like this is different than what this word means, but I couldn't figure out what that word was, so I was like, we're doing watercress anyway. So I cheated a
And
bit on that one.
you said as a palate cleanser, is that something that's indicated in the Transylvanian cookbook? Is that do you
Not
was that
not specifically, but what was indicated was like these salads that are just one thing. And I was like, you're
right,
not going to eat just a whole plate of dandelion greens or something. That was another one that was coming up in the menu here. Those are
hmm,
too bitter. You're not going to eat just a plate of them. So I was like, the only way I can see all of these salads being used is for that purpose, just as a
got
couple of
it,
bites, as a refresher, as a like something light,
right.
something. And so that was how I framed it based
Hmm.
on my interpretation of that.
No,
But it
that's
wasn't indicated palate cleanser. That was just
but
what I
no, no,
took
no,
away.
but I think that's a really fair. So I think that's a very fair form of interpretation because again, these cookbooks don't. The details they give you are shocking sometimes. Like make a drill bit that's the length of the
Yeah.
ox,
Yeah.
or but then other times there are details they completely leave out. Um, and for example, what is the purpose of this salad? Like, what is its purpose? They
Yeah.
don't say. But then we, as the redactor, as the person analyzing this text to recreate it, have to come up with logical, reasonable assumptions. And as you say, dandelion greens, have any of you eaten dandelion greens? I love dandelion greens, but usually mixed in with something else.
Yep. Yeah, and the
uh,
salad there was one that mentioned garden salad, or it
right,
said, "Make this like the garden salad," but then I laughed so hard because the footnote was garden salad is mentioned, and the next 3 or 4 recipes talk about the garden salad, but we don't have the recipe for the garden salad, so we don't know what it is. It's like this mystery,
I
lost
can
to time, who knows?
Right.
Um,
So then that's probably the best way you could come at that would be to figure out what a typical garden was like
yeah,
in
I
16th century Transylvania. And it's not going to be carrots and onions. It's going to be
no,
probably a bunch of different greens,
yeah,
like a bunch of different herbs.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there was enough other salads in the salad section that I just skipped it. I was like, we're not gonna. But then all of it would be dandelion salad. Make the like it's dandelion greens and the same vinaigrette, or cucumber salad is
Right.
cucumbers and the same vinaigrette, also with black pepper. Like
Right.
little tweaks like
Right.
that. And so yeah, I just called them palate cleansers and put out a couple of those. And then we did a green beans, which I know you wanted to talk about, so we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
And then we did the chicken, and we did the fruit and wine sauce for the chicken, and then there was another one, that the Despo sauce, or Depot sauce, I don't know, but it just made me laugh that they called it that, and it was literally just a veggie broth and garlic, which was super easy. So we did that.
Okay.
And then we did a chickpea dish, and then the dandelion greens, and then the beef roast with the garlic harvester sauce, and then a tarragon and sage sauce. Because I have our baroness, one of the leaders of our local group, is named has tarragon in her name that she's chosen for herself. So I wanted to
Mhm.
honor that. So I made sure to include tarragon a couple of times throughout this dish, or this menu, just to sort of highlight her and all she does for our group. And then we did a hot vegetable medley that was rainbow carrots and parsnips and celery root and onion and garlic and currants,
Mhm.
all in a big, with a little bit of spice, and then a spiced rice. And then the dessert was a little bit tongue in cheek. Like, I had promised to do a low effort feast, which I failed at. But when I first promised and I decided to do Transylvanian, I started making Vlad the Impaler jokes immediately. And so I decided that the dessert, instead of making medieval dessert, one of the ways I was going to do something low effort was we just did a s'mores buffet. I was
Mhm.
like, you're going to do your own impaling, and we're having s'mores, and I'm giving them enough food that nobody is going to question whether they got their money's worth of medieval food. So I am phoning it in for dessert. I'm not putting any
I'm
effort into it.
phoning
We're
it in
buying,
for dessert.
yeah, I'm like, we're buying s'more stuff. I'm putting it out there with a sign that says, "These are my roasting sticks. I want them back." And we're letting people help themselves to dessert after court. And that was my little, like, yeah, this is and on the menu, I didn't even put that it was a s'mores buffet. I just said a Vlad the Impaler inspired skewer it yourself dessert. And then it was s'mores. And I thought that was a lot of fun. And not as many people laughed at that, to me, as I thought that they would. So I think I'm funny, and that's the important thing. Um, and so so yeah, we did a s'mores bar, and that was my dessert. But yeah, the rest of it was still pretty solid. The
So,
green
so,
beans.
yeah, the green beans. So this is interesting. And this is another case where I definitely would want to get back to the original, and see, do you know what the original, so I haven't gotten a chance to look at this. You have a translation of the Hungarian, but the Hungarian was translated, what was the original language?
Let me double
I'm,
check
I'm
here.
wondering. So it could
Here,
it could
I'll look while
actually be
you
Latin.
explain why you're
Yeah,
stuck
yeah.
on green beans.
So
Yeah.
green beans. So green beans, if you mean by green, this is the thing. There are words in all the way up into 16th and even 17th century European languages that are used for foods, that where the food to which it's referring is not like the modern version. So I'll give you an example. The word pumpkin. That the word pumpkin, when it refers in the pre 1500 world, the word pumpkin or the word gourd does not refer to the winter squash that comes from North America. It refers to a completely different cultivar with completely different properties, but the word is still there. And so a lot of modern cooks will read a medieval recipe and see the word pumpkin, and they'll assume they're talking about this really actually high starch content gourd that's also very sweet from the New World. And it's not. It's just that when the New World cultivar entered the cognition of Europeans, they didn't give it a different name. They just kept using the same name for a similarly shaped thing from before. And so green beans, I suspect that in Transylvania in the 16th century, green beans are not string beans like some
Mhm.
American US people would call them, because that's a New World plant that comes from Central America. That's part of the Columbian Exchange. And it usually takes not decades, but centuries for New World foodstuffs to get uptake into the diets of of Europeans.
Mhm.
So my suspicion is that green beans might be green fava beans.
Oh,
But
okay. Yeah.
I would have to see the original language to verify that, because um, that is very often the case. The word is actually faba,
Yeah.
which is the word for, like, also for like dry beans, that, like kidney beans or something like that, like those kinds of beans also. So I suspect they probably meant green fava beans, which
That
is
makes
different
sense.
than dried fava beans. Um, Yeah, is my suspicion. I don't know
Yeah.
if there's a note in the book about it or not.
So it doesn't actually say it. It just talks about how there's the text of the manuscript, "The Science of Cooking," on a Hungarian website, along with a list of feast menus for a Transylvanian castle, and then they translated from Hungarian into English. So it doesn't actually say what it is on the Hungarian website, if that's the
Hmm.
translation or if that is
Hmm.
sort of the original.
Right.
But I've got the actual green bean recipe here as listed.
Hmm. Right.
Um, and it reads like it's a whole section. It says the next is about the green bean, and then it's its
Right.
whole section by itself, which is very funny
Right.
because all the rest are like, and the next is about the hen, and talks like it has like 8 hen recipes, and this
Right.
is the whole section that's like one recipe.
Right.
But it says about the green bean. I saw them cook the green beans in clean water. Then they added saffron, black pepper. They mixed flour with vinegar, then put it onto the pot and served it to the prince. Um, and so I was like, okay, so it's a bit of a like they made a roux with with the water or whatever they were
Interesting. Read,
using.
read, yeah,
Um,
read that. Yeah, read that to me again, because that's
yeah,
very interesting. That's an
yeah.
interesting technique.
So I saw them cook the green beans in clean water. Then they added saffron, black pepper. They mixed flour with vinegar, then put it onto the pot and served it to the prince. So
Interesting. You're right.
what I did with
Hmm.
that is I ignored the flour part because of the fact that I was like, if I have to put that like on the stove and try to make a roux, like I was looking at my dishes and I was like, I don't have the stove, the burner space at the time that
Right.
we're going to be serving this, so I didn't.
Right.
So instead, I made a saffron vinaigrette. And so I like infused oil with saffron and let
Right.
that sit, and then mixed it with vinegar and and I think salt and pepper, and just sort of made a saffron vinaigrette and sort of fried like steamed
Yeah.
the beans, and
Right.
I added in some onion because we had onion, and then just like tossed it in the saffron vinaigrette and sent it out as like a vinegared beans. So
Right.
that was sort of where I tweaked the recipes. I skipped the flour part. But the
That is
funny thing is that
interesting.
of this whole section,
Hmm.
this green bean recipe, that's the first sentence of it. But then he says, I saw them cook lamb in salted water once it was done. They poured salted milk onto it, then served it to the
Hmm.
prince. Hare
Mm.
thighs, like hair like rabbit, was
Right.
roasted, then covered in salted cabbage leaves and served to the prince. They added salt
Huh.
to living crabs too. Then they roast them on coals, added salted water, and served them to the prince. So
Wow.
there's 4 sentences in this green bean recipe, and one of them's about green beans, and then he goes on a tangent about crabs and rabbits, and I'm like, what is going on, buddy? Like, it was just fun.
So I don't know how late in the collection this is, but I almost feel like he was dictating, because they never wrote their own things. They dictated, and a
Yeah,
scribe would actually write it down. So I feel like maybe we've reached the 3 a.m. stage of dictation, where
that
he's
was
he's
recipe
he's
number 650 of
right. See,
800 and
yeah. So I
817.
so yeah, I
So
feel like we've reached the 3 a.m. stage of dictating. Like, so my imagination, and this is not quite right, but in my world, this is like a university student writing an essay, and the essay is due the next day, and they just started it Sunday morning, and it's due on Monday morning, and so it's 3 a.m. on Monday, and they're now just like vomiting stuff out as it
yeah.
stream of conscience. They're just, as it occurs to them,
Oh,
it's just being spouted off.
stream of consciousness all the way throughout. Like it's an absolute hoot. I loved this cook. Like I said, a lot of it was there wasn't much for recipes in the cookbook. It's
Right.
ingredients lists and vague cooking directions maybe. So I was making it up all the way through, but I was just so having so much fun with the way they write and the way the author writes and the way the translators have their snarky little like there's no actual recipe for the garden salad. We don't know what it is. Or there was
Right.
another one that said something like the author wrote something about like you'll find reference to this in this recipe, and then the little footnote like ding, and then you go down to the bottom. It's like actually you won't. That's the whole footnote. It's just actually you won't. Like he didn't put it in there. And I'm like
Actually, you won't.
that was the entire footnote. Actually you won't. I was like I love these people. Like it was just
You're
so
right.
delightful. So
Actually, because the academic neutral footnote would be, in fact, we were unable to locate such a reference. But no, instead
no,
it's actual.
this was not
Actually, you
academic.
won't.
This was a bunch of reenactors crowdfunded, and they paid a translator. Can you make this into English? And they're like, okay. And It's just, yeah, I was just
Actually,
like,
you
this
won't.
it feels like I'm reading this cookbook online made by people translated a decade ago by somebody I don't know, and it felt like community. I was like,
Right.
this is what I love about it. This is why I'm in this game. This is why I
Oh my
participate in the
God.
reenactment group that I do, specifically because this is so comfortable, and
You won't. No,
I
actually, no, you won't.
actually you won't. Yeah, there was also a, let me see if I can find it.
Oh my God. Great.
There was one that they called the recipe for Saturday, which I thought was very cute. And
For
they're making
Saturday.
French. It's called for
Yeah.
Saturday is the recipe.
Okay.
They're making French toast is what they're doing here. You shall need lots of eggs. Put butter into a
Hmm.
baking pan. Whip some eggs.
Yes.
Slice some bread. Dip the bread into the
Yes.
eggs. Put it in the
Yes.
baking pan. Then do this with
Yes.
the other slices too. They should touch each
Yes.
other. Pour the eggs onto them. Cook them. Put them on the coal and cover it with the lid. Cook it. Then add some ginger. And then
Nice.
the next recipe is for the day of Saturday. So that's Saturday morning. That's your brunch. That's your, like, we're making French toast. And then for the day of Saturday is boil some white cabbage in milk, cut the cabbage into slices, put it into the milk, then make some scrambled eggs. If you have no milk, sour cream will do too. It's like
Aha. Okay, wait.
milky
So there
cabbage.
we go. There's a fermented dairy reference.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that is interesting.
Sour cream.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was
Yep.
a couple of those, and so that might be like maybe it was meant to be more like yogurt or something. I'm not entirely sure,
Well,
but there
no, no,
wasn't
it's
a
just
lot of
that it's
references
just
to that either.
right, right. So sour cream is one, it's more shelf stable, right?
Mhm.
Two, it has a completely different texture and it's acidic. It's more acidic than just uncultured dairy is. So that was being added to a bread thing or was being served as a topping.
That one was being added to the cabbage and milk.
Right,
Boil white cabbage in milk, cut the cabbage into slices, put it in the milk, then make scrambled eggs. And if you don't have milk, sour cream will do
right.
too.
Okay. So actually, so yeah, that's a
So
concession to
yeah,
you might not have fresh milk,
it's coleslaw.
but you
Yeah,
therefore you probably have some cultured milk because that's shelf stable,
yeah,
right? So that is
yeah.
interesting. Oh yeah, that is
Yeah,
very
but I
interesting.
thought it was fun. I was like, on Saturday, you're gonna have French toast in the morning, and you're gonna have coleslaw at
Oh, but
lunch,
you're not
and
going,
I
but
was
you're not going to have it in the morning. That is not a morning dish.
no,
No, it's not a morning
yeah,
dish. And actually, so
yeah.
my interpretation is it's not French toast, but it's actually more like a bread pudding
Oh,
because
that
it's
makes sense.
baked,
Yeah,
because it's
they
baked.
should be touching.
It's
Yeah,
baked and they should be
yeah,
touching. So I think that's actually, it's not a French toast, which they do have. Pan perdu is a thing, but that is actually
yeah.
fried. Whereas you actually
That
use a
makes sense.
baking dish. You use lit. And when they say lay butter down, they mean butter, like you like
Yeah,
butter. And then
yeah.
you put was it you put your bread in it and then the egg comes on
No,
top?
okay. Put butter in the
Yep.
pan. Whip the eggs. Slice the bread. Dip the bread into the
Yes, good.
eggs. Put it in the
Yes.
pan, and then put in the others, and then pour the eggs
Yes.
on them. So you're dipping it and pouring
Yes.
it,
Yeah.
and then cooking
Yeah.
it
So
in the
that's
coal covered with
that's
the
that's
lid,
brilliant because the
and then
the
add ginger.
pre-dipping is going to be to make sure it's saturated before the baking
Yeah,
causes the egg to seize, right? It causes the custard to seize.
yeah,
So it's already pre-dipped, it's already absorbed. You put it in your pan, you pour the rest of the custard mixture over top,
that makes sense. Yeah,
and the eggs are going to mix automatically. They're going to mix with it as it bakes. Like before it sets, the butter is going to actually melt a little bit into the eggs and it's going to kind of make a custardy thing. And then you're going to
mhm.
have this really delicious bread pudding. It's a 16th,
Yeah,
you have discovered a 16th century Transylvanian bread pudding recipe and
and
it sounds
yeah,
super
and
yum.
then add add ginger,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I'm gonna try putting ginger on my next bread pudding or French toast or whatever I
It's
decide to do, and like that's
super
fun.
delicious.
So
So, it's
yeah,
funny because in Asia, ginger is used as a savory ingredient in almost everything all
hmm,
across Asia,
yeah,
right? So here it is not,
yeah. Whereas for us, it's like
it's a
desserts
sweet
all
thing,
the
right?
time.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
you were saying that it is usually used in sweet things modernly made me realize that where I currently am, where I currently live,
not so much.
it is not. It is in everything, everything, and more likely actually to be in a savory dish than in a sweet dish. So
Neat.
yeah, so that's very interesting. Yeah, I try to tell people this in the Middle Ages, there are actually there are tighter culinary connections across Eurasia than there are now, right? Which is
Hmm.
counterintuitive at the level of haute cuisine, right? I'm talking about at the level of the top guys, not about the food of the everyday person, right? We're
Yeah,
clearly
yeah,
talking about a
yeah.
Transylvanian prince.
cookbook for
Yeah,
saints.
we're not talking about the people who tended the goats that created his goat cheese. We're talking about
Which may or may not have existed. We don't
right,
know.
right. This
But
is haute
yeah.
cuisine at the level of haute cuisine across Eurasia in this era. There's the similarities in dishes. They're much closer. But I'm not saying that there's no regional variations, but in terms of the flavor palette, in terms of the kinds of dishes that are being made and the kinds of ingredients that are going into them, at again, haute cuisine, there's just so many more similarities. It's really fascinating.
That's cool.
Well, we have a conversation.
So anyway, so I don't. Oh yeah, there's a whole conversation going on about
Like
fireflies.
interesting, cool, awesome. That's what the live chat is for, guys. You enjoy that.
Yeah, how goes the ravioli?
So the first one, I made up the first one, and it it spread out into almost like a like no, like not even a patty, like more like a sheet, but it didn't completely disintegrate. And as it cooled, it got more solid. Of course, it's cheese. So I added a little bit more egg, a little bit more egg white because it has egg white as a binder, to see if maybe it needs a little more egg to make it set a little bit more. And the ones that are currently in here, hold on a minute. Okay, right. Can you see? Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, you can see. Okay, so the ones that are in here, they have spread more. They have spread some, but not as much as the first one. So I think I'm going to actually add more egg white, even more egg white, and see if that gets it to retain its shape a little bit more. But it was super yummy. Oh my gosh, was it yummy. Now the original recipe, so let me read the original recipe here. So this is
this one you've made before?
No, new one I'm playing with as we do it. So this is called ravioli bianchi, white ravioli. And I'll read you the recipe. So white ravioli. Take some good provatura, which is a kind of cheese, pound it well. Then, while continuing to pound, add a little butter, some ginger, and some cinnamon. For one provatura, because they come as these balls basically, add 3 well-beaten egg whites and an appropriate amount of sugar. Mix all these things together. Then make ravioli the length and thickness of a finger, roughly human finger size. Yeah. Then roll them in good flour. Note that these ravioli should be made without a dough. But then there's a marginal note. So that's what the cook says. But then someone went back through and glossed it and said, but if you want to make them with dough, do so. So 15th century snark for the win. Boil them gently so that they do not break. Remove them when they have boiled and place them in bowls with sugar and cinnamon. Right. And you can color them yellow with saffron, which I love that comes at the very end, because if you want to color them yellow with saffron, you have to do it before then. So it's super helpful, right?
It's like when the teacher would do that thing where they put like a note on the back. It's like, they start with read your instructions fully. And then the last thing is like sign your name and don't do anything else, hand it in and you get full marks. And everybody that does all of the work fails. It's like, it's that like humans, we haven't changed that much. We do the same thing.
Really have not. So I did that. I wanted saffron. So saffron. I have a lot of saffron right now. I ground it up and then I actually mixed the saffron in with the egg white so that the yellow would actually leach out in the mortar and pestle. So that the yellow would actually leach out of the saffron into the egg white. And then that's how we ended up with this lovely yellow dough, right? Doesn't that look pretty? And so I haven't been able to, I'm in Korea for those who don't know. So I have not been able to find provatura cheese. Provatura, it seems that even in the Middle Ages, provatura and mozzarella were very similar to what they are now. And even in the Middle Ages, writers would mix them up. They're close, they're cousins. They're like first cousins of cheese. They're a stretchy cheese, right? And they would mix them up because one author says in the 15th century something like in Lazio they call it provatura, but in Rome they call in Lazio they call it provatura, but in Rome they call them mozza. And you're like, but those are two different cheeses actually. But mozzarella is similar. It has similar properties. It's a stretchy cheese. So I was able to get some whole milk mozzarella, thank God. And I mashed that until it became a nice paste. And then I added all those ingredients in the mortar. And that's what's given us these little guys. And I made them into little fingerlings, and then I rolled them in flour. I don't use wheat, so I'm using rice flour. They may or may not have used rice flour for this particular recipe, but in Italy, and all across medieval Europe, they absolutely had rice flour in high level kitchens. Rice flour is used as a binder instead of bread in some cases. It is used also to make dishes for sick people. So, but contrary to popular belief, they had rice in medieval Europe and they had rice flour. So I'm using rice flour so that I'm not using a gluten-based flour. I suspect the flour they probably mean in this recipe is probably wheat flour, though. So yeah,
sense.
that's my suspicion. So I've now got some other ones in here. They haven't spread out quite as much. I think they might be done. Again, you'll notice there were no timings. Boil them for how long?
Yeah, till
it's done.
Yeah.
Till it's done.
Yep. Yeah, or the amount of times it's just like cook the meat and like, cool. Did I fry it? Did I roast it on a spit? Did I put it in a pot with water and let it steam? Did I boil it? Like I don't know. I wonder what I did. And so it was a lot of just making it up.
Okay. So I put it in a sieve.
Oh, pretty.
So you can see it did not retain its shape. It just kind of flattened into this thing. So I'm going to go through now. This is part of the experimental process. I'm going to take a couple more of these little guys and I'm going to add some more egg white to it and see if that helps it firm up. It could also be that the mozzarella is not close enough to the probatura in structure, in fat versus protein ratios, all those little details, that it might not have enough structure on its own to withstand the gentle boiling. So that could be as well. But this is part of the redaction process. You try some things, and if you're lucky, it doesn't taste awful. But I can tell you though that I really think a sprinkling of sugar and cinnamon would be very tasty on this, because just a lot, not a lot, just a little to counterbalance the saltiness of the mozzarella, because mozzarella is very salty, right? It's a very salty cheese, actually. And so to counter that deep saltiness of the mozzarella, just a touch of granulated sugar, and of course cinnamon is also naturally sweet. I think this would be really delicious. And we know that this exact dish was often served as a first course in Italian dining. So this would actually be your appetizer in that sense of the thing that would like stimulate your appetite for the next thing. Ravioli was nearly always a first course. So
cool.
Yeah. So it's tasty. I think audience would love it. Oh yeah, you were going to look up some like equivalent recipes, right? I
don't even remember where that was.
Oh, that's okay. That's cool. What else?
I remember when you talked about the first course, it reminded me of one of my big wins I was really excited about was the electuarium.
Oh, yeah, right.
So it talked about basically making a quince paste.
Right.
Was how they describe, and like they describe how to cook it. And then the little footnote, which I love, was saying it was a electuarium was a Roman remedy that cooked things down to a thick jelly or paste, solid enough to slice and place in the mouth where it would melt. And so this would be similar to the modern quince paste known as membrillo.
Oh, nice.
Available in Mexican grocery stores today.
Interesting.
So I was able to walk into our local Latin grocery store and find this canned quince paste called membrillo, and buy it off the shelf and open the can and have a medieval dish that was done and it was made exactly the way that they described it. And I was like, this is the lowest effort way to do something. And I was like, fantastic, because finding quince in Alberta, Canada, was
and
not
it's
easy.
not in season right now. So quince is an autumn fruit.
Yeah.
So
and even if it was, I'm not super confident that I would have been able to find it easily. Like there was a lot of ingredients that just ripped my heart out that I couldn't find.
Do you have Whole Foods?
I really wanted.
Do you have Whole Foods?
we have like stuff like that, but yeah, I just was striking out like there were certain things
Yeah,
that I couldn't find in a variety of different grocery
right.
stores, and like I wanted to find parsley root so bad. I tore this city up for parsley root. I tried different. I
Yeah.
tried different ethnic stores and like
So
different
so
cultures. I tried calling greenhouses.
when I need parsley root, I literally just buy some parsley plants and rip them up. That's what I do.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, but like
that's what I
the actual like
that
the root, like
yeah, 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 but that's
the
exactly, like I rip them up and I that's because that's parsley root. So I just buy the whole plant, and then I mean I still use the leaves of the whole plant, but that's the only way I've ever been able to get either parsley root or cilantro root, because cilantro root is used in Thai cuisine in
oh
certain
neat.
curry
Yeah.
paste recipes. They use cilantro root. So the only way I've been able to get it generally is to just buy the whole plant.
Yeah, and I couldn't even find that. Like I could just find
Wow.
the curly parsley or the Italian parsley. Yeah, I tried greenhouses, I tried farmers markets,
Wow.
and like just striking out. Nobody had it, and it sucked. And then same with lamb's lettuce, corn salad was another one that I was like, that exists. Like that should be easy to find. No, it was not. I tore up the city and struck
Wow.
out everywhere. I sent emails, I made phone calls, I tried dropping into stores that didn't have good like online presences, and just struck out left, right, and center, and I was so disappointed about it. So being able to walk into a Latin store and buy this quince paste and walk out and be like, "There, a medieval dish," like just open the can, plunk it down, and I did it. It's mentioned in the cookbook exactly that. I was so happy. I'm sure there's some slight changes, but it was close enough, and it was a really nice addition, like a sweet little treat on that starter platter that a lot of people were really happy about. I laughed because most of the dishes through this entire feast that I got the most compliments on are the ones I didn't do any work for. Like they would rave about that, and I was like, cool. I opened a can, and like the beets was another one that they were like, the beets were amazing. How did you do that? And I was like, well, I found a specific brand of beets that are like of canned beets that were cubed,
Right.
and they weren't pickled. It was just beets and salt
Right.
and in this water. And so I bought some cans of that, and I opened the cans and I put it in the bowl and I put the dressing on it and I served it. And that's all I did. And like they raved about the beets, and I'm like, and like if I had done the work to to peel the beets, to boil the beets, to chop the beets into perfect little dices, and like done it
Right.
all by scratch, I feel like people would have liked it less than when I just opened a can and dumped it in a bowl and said, there, like it's
Oh,
achieving the same purpose,
yeah.
but I cut a bunch of the actual physical work for myself and my
Oh,
team out.
beets are a pain
And
in the ass to
yeah,
prepare. From
exactly.
root, because they're dirty
Yeah.
generally when you get them, and you have to peel them.
Hmm.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. So I was like, technically I could. It's not that I'm incapable of making the
Yeah,
beets, but the amount of time and effort I have, I'm going to buy this can, which
absolutely.
isn't pickled, which I was excited because most of them were pickled beets, and there was one brand that I found that wasn't. And yeah, that was another one where I got most of the compliments on a dish that I opened a thing, put it in, done, and I'm like, oh, all the stuff I worked on isn't the stuff that people are raving about. It broke my heart, but it was very, very funny. So,
Yeah,
um,
the cook's lament, shall we call it?
yep,
It is a
yep,
typical one. And actually, it's funny. That's the
yeah,
kind of what you were talking about. Really feels like the kind of lament a lot of parents have with food they make for their children, right? Like
definitely.
you
Yeah.
go to all this effort to make this elaborate dish, and the thing that the kids like the most is the piece of Wonder Bread that you served with it, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, or bought this expensive cat tree and they want the box or whatever,
right,
like it's just like, ah,
right.
it was very funny. So no actual hard feelings about all of that, but it just made me laugh that everything people like more than once came up and raved about was the stuff that had very little to do about it. It's like, oh yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
God.
we mixed it, we put it on your plate, and I'm glad you liked it.
So the electuarium in the cookbook itself, did he say any, did he provide any details about like why, like or should this be served?
Oh, do you want me to read it?
Yeah, please do, because
Yeah. Okay.
I think people hearing how these original recipes actually read will give them a better appreciation for the struggles we face when we are trying to recreate them.
Yeah, it's super appetizing to start here. It says, take out the core of the quince with the seeds. If there are rotten parts or worms, cut them out. It should be clean.
Good, glad to know
Wash it in.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, thank you for clarifying to not eat worms. I appreciate the insights, Mr. Kitchen Master here. This is great. um, Wash it in clean water, put it into a clean pot, add some water, make some paste. Once cooked, take it out from the fire and let it cool. Take off the lid and squeeze out the water with a clean canvas into a clean
Hmm.
pot. So like a cheesecloth,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Um, yeah, melt some sugar in sweet wine, mix
Mm,
it together with the quince, put it in on the fire. Once boiled, pass it through a strainer and boil
right.
again.
Yeah.
Put a drop of it onto a knife, and if it's starting to coagulate,
Ah,
you're done with the boiling. Let it
great.
cool, pour it
Ah,
into a form or tin if you'd like. If you have no sugar, use honey, but warm the honey beforehand. And
nice.
that's what it says.
Wow,
And then
that
that,
is a lot of detail. I mean, not quantities, of course, because God
yeah,
forbid you provide quantities. But he actually,
no,
I've actually found several recipes in Western European sources that also do the knife test, where it's basically the
yeah,
ball test, right? Like in modern kitchens, when we're doing
yep,
candying, they say to drop it in the water and see what happens, right? But instead of doing that, they drop it on a knife to see what its properties are. And so it's
yeah,
really interesting that he provides that bit of detail, that it needs to be, it looks sounds like a soft candy, right? So that it needs to be soft candy, not hard candy. That is really
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, so it's making this paste, and again, it's one of the more detailed recipes, and it's one of the things I didn't bother making from scratch. I just bought it. I'm like, "Ugh,
Well,
couldn't have had
I
that
can,
kind of detail for any of the stuff
and
I tried to
and
make."
in
But
fact, probably the Mexican stuff probably didn't have wine in it. So I suspect I
probably not.
suspect the Transylvanian version is actually much more interesting, like has a much better flavor
Yeah. Mhm.
profile because wine isn't, contrary to what people believe, it's not about the alcohol. Wine contains compounds that are flavor enhancers, right? So
Yeah.
it's umami,
Yeah.
right? So it will actually boost the flavor, make it more complex and not just sweet, right? Quince, have you
Yeah.
ever eaten a quince on its own?
No, I've never found one.
Oh,
Like
they
I wanted
are
to for my last
they are
stew.
violently bitter, not sour, bitter.
Oh, good to
They're
know.
they are the kind of bitter that dries your mouth out like that,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Um,
Like a choke cherry kind of thing
yeah,
that,
yes.
yeah.
Which is why they're always turned into some kind of candy or some kind of marmalade because you
Yep.
can't eat them. I mean, no, I don't know any human. Can any of you eat just raw quince with nothing on it? I can't. I tried. And I like sour and I like bitter. And it just made my mouth feel like it was never going to be moist again. So that's why there are all these recipes for quince that involve candying because you can't really eat it otherwise. But it's this
Yeah.
big fruit and they grow in large quantities and they're easy to grow. The quince trees don't need, as far as I can tell, a whole lot of maintenance, considering they just grow
Okay.
everywhere here and no one takes care of them. So humans being human are like, well, we can't just let this thing go to waste. It's a lot of food, right? There's a lot of potential
Yeah.
nutrients and calories here. So how can we make it
Yeah.
palatable? Load it up
Yeah.
with sugar, whether it's honey
Yeah.
or sugar, right?
Yeah, and it tasted the one that I bought off the shelf tasted like it felt like a paste, like that jelly that sort of like disappears into your mouth. But then the taste was like a fruit leather,
Right,
kind of
right.
like
Yep,
those. I don't know if you've ever
yep.
had those like sort of fruit
Abs-
candy bars or whatever.
absolutely. Yep.
Like
I love those things. They're so tasty.
it was amazing. Yeah, so it was that, and I was like, this is phenomenal, and it was the lowest effort version and I was like, and it looks really fancy, and I get to talk about it, and like it's got a cool name on the menu. Electuarium sounds cooler than quince
It
paste.
really does. You're absolutely 100%. That is
Yep.
definitely good branding. That is good branding right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to do some sneaky, or to do some creative branding for this menu because so many of the dishes are named in such a terribly boring way. Like, it's just like it's not even like chickpea salad, it's just chickpea. Like, everybody gets a pea. Everybody gets one chickpea.
Well, and
That
that
is
and
the
that
name of the
and
dish.
that
Like, it was so
and
stupid.
that's probably a translation error. So, guys, I'm a
Yeah.
professional translator, and I will tell you that not all professional translators are good. And it is likely that whoever they got to do this translation was probably not a native English speaker. First off,
That's very possible.
probably
Yeah.
their native language was actually Hungarian. Um,
Yep.
and there are languages, in certain languages, certain things are uncountable, meaning that it doesn't have a plural. Like the word money doesn't really, it
Mm.
has a plural, but it's a different meaning, right? Or,
Yeah.
effort, or there's words that are just uncountable in certain languages, and certain foods are uncountable. And it could be that chickpea in Hungarian is uncountable, or that
makes sense.
chickpea in whatever. I don't know if it was Romanian that it was that it was written in. Oh, maybe Romanian.
Sure.
If it was made by a cook, it's likely it was Romanian. It's less likely it was Latin.
Okay.
But either way, actually, it's really funny. I would have a better chance of understanding. I would have a really good chance of understanding the Romanian. If it's, please let it be Romanian. Please let it be Romanian.
Right.
Please let it be Romanian.
I eagerly anticipate finding out what the answer is if you're able to hunt down the original.
Yeah, because I'm a Romance language person, so I have a really good shot at understanding the Romanian. But the point is that it might be that chickpeas are uncountable in Romanian. And so that translations, not all translators are good. Not all translators actually know what they're talking about. And it sounds like they didn't find a translator who specialized in culinary arts. So probably they ended up, and probably doesn't have an understanding about historical cuisine. So they probably...
No, they actually clarified that.
So that, unfortunately, you really can't just find not just any translator. You really, when you want a specialty text like this, you really want to spend a little or a lot extra money and find someone who actually knows what they're talking about, who specializes. That's why different translators specialize in medical text or legal text or literary translation, right? Those are all different skills. So
that makes sense.
So probably anything that you found was weird was a consequence of, one, the translator probably not being a native English speaker, because I don't think there are many native English speakers doing Hungarian English translation. Two,
no,
probably not. Two, it's probably a lot in the other direction though. Two, not really understanding the subject matter in a granular sort of way.
Yeah. So throughout, I was trying to come up with more creative names for the different dishes, instead of just mushrooms. Like, okay, we're gonna at least mixed garlic mushrooms, like just add something to it. But here and there, I had some fun where I called that pears and carrots recipe that we talked about earlier in the stream, where it had that little note about, like, you can do it, Lord Janosch, even though it looks like a really easy, really easy dish. And like, why did they need? And so, like, I named that, like, Lord Janosch's pears and carrots, and I used some of the names that he name dropped in that ox and wedding story, and named like the dish after Babek and like that sort of thing. Georgie Babek, like, just named it Babek spiced rice instead of just calling it rice. And so where I could, just made it a little bit more fun, look a little better on a menu.
Right. Something just went wrong on my screen. It just froze. Okay, hold on a minute, everyone. Stay with us.
Yeah.
What the heck? Yeah.
Not freezing on my end.
Oh, great.
Anyway.
Okay.
Looks okay.
Is it there's still streaming? Because my screen. Okay. Well, my screen's just frozen. But as long as the stream is still showing, that's fine. It just means I can't see any of the live chat because, like, the whole screen is frozen. It's not responding to any touches whatsoever, but that's fine. That is fine. As long as we're still here, we can hear and we can see. That's all I care about.
Yeah, we're doing all right. Okay. There was a comment that said that maybe chickpeas were super rare in Hungary, and that's it's possible. There wasn't a lot of chickpea recipes. There's only like one or two, so I didn't see a huge amount of those. Yeah,
so no, chickpeas are actually pretty common in that part of the world because of the ties with the Silk Road. So I think it's just a question of countable versus uncountable, and someone who didn't understand the material from a granular level. Yeah, I think it's probably what
that makes sense.
Probably what it comes down to.
It's still surprising that there weren't a lot of recipes for it then. I searched for it specifically just because my dad can get them for free through work. And so I was like, free is my favorite cost for an ingredient. And I knew that he could do chickpeas. So I was like, I wonder if there's any chickpea stuff. Can I get a free dish out of this?
So
and there was only like one or two.
I can tell you why, because this is a recipe. This is a cookbook aimed at haute cuisine. It's aimed at the wealthy. They're not, chickpeas are commoner food.
That makes sense.
It's a pulse.
Yeah, because it was so plentiful. It was
It's a commoner food. It's common. It's cheap. It's not a component of prestige. It's not prestigious, right? So you'll notice there was probably, I'm assuming, lots of fish, lots of meat, lots of sauces, right? These are all haute cuisine. probably, I mean, that you had a carrot dish at all shocks me because
There was a few.
uh, be, because
There, like, yeah, carrots was mentioned a lot. Parsnips were mentioned a lot.
yeah, that all
Yeah.
really shocks me because a lot of their Western European counterparts don't there's not many vegetable recipes, and the mostly you only find the vegetable although that could have been for the fish days, could have been for the fish days.
Mm,
Most of the vegetable recipes you will find in French, Italian, and English cookbooks from this era are are for Lenten days. They're for fasting.
mm,
They're for those
yeah.
days when you're not supposed to eat meat. So it
Yeah, and one of the reasons I loved it so much was because, like I said, it's a huge, huge resource of just hundreds and hundreds of pages. And yeah, there was no shortage of vegetable dishes.
yeah
Like there was a lot. That's why there a lot of the times I was choosing to interpret things as like it must not have existed or it must not have been common because he wrote down everything. So if he didn't write it down, it probably didn't
yeah.
exist. Just because of how this author went, he just wrote
But
everything, even his sassy little side pieces.
I think it has more to do with what was acceptable in the upper echelons, right? So
Mhm.
what counted as prestigious enough to actually include in his collection. So apparently, and it could be if he's writing for a specific prince, right? Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't spot the name of which prince it
right.
was. And
That
yeah, and so it's possible.
that's fine. But if it was written
Yeah.
for a specific prince, this is my point.
Mhm.
This could be about his tastes, right? So it
Mm,
could be
yeah.
that this particular prince really liked his veggie dishes. Whereas we know for a fact that a lot of the rich and powerful of 15th century Europe liked a lot of meat. Well, how do we know that? Because they kept getting gout. So, so
Yep.
it could just be that this particular prince's tastes were more balanced than say his Western European peers, or it could be
Yeah.
that amongst that for whatever reason those vegetables were the more expensive vegetables in his particular region. Like, yeah, I don't know about the availability, for instance, of carrots there. Was that something that was more
Yeah.
expensive to grow? Was it something they were importing from somewhere else? Was it a specific kind of carrot that itself was more prestigious? Right? There's so many factors go into
Yeah.
what is included in these collections that we can never assume that it's representative of anything except for itself.
Yeah. One of the choices that I made is I had originally when I planned it out, I had three different carrot related dishes. So I had the pears and carrots, and then the hot vegetable medley at the end, and then I was gonna do carrot greens as one of the
Ooh,
palate cleansers
carrot
because that was one
greens.
of the salads that was listed
So
was carrot
yummy.
greens.
Oh,
Um, I ended up vetoing the carrot greens just because actually buying carrots with the greens on was harder than I expected it to be.
yeah.
Like I knew I could get some, but for the quantity I needed, I actually struggled. So I was like, nope, new plan. And so I got rid of the carrot greens. And so what I did to keep things visually different and keep the feast interesting instead of just like, oh, another carrot dish,
Right.
was the pears and carrots that I did at the beginning was with all orange carrots, like sliced into. I did just sort of sticks. Carrot sticks was the size that I went for,
Right.
and then the hot vegetable medley I did rainbow carrots. So there's purple and yellow and red, and then along with the red onion and the celery root and the parsley or the
Right.
parsnips and garlic and stuff. So and the currants. So kept that being like that was a much more colorful rainbow beautiful dish,
Right.
and the original one was a lot more simple. So that way there was some differentiation
Right.
between them.
Right.
And had them sort of at opposite ends of the feast as well. So it wasn't like we've just finished our
And
carrots,
more
you know?
carrots now. Yeah, it
Yep.
is annoying that they don't sell more root vegetables with their greens attached.
Yep.
If you go to
Yep.
Italy, it is, for instance, you're much more likely to find them with all of the greens with roots with all of the vegetables where the greens are edible.
Oh, oh, we lost Rachel. Sorry, folks. I have no idea how to control any of this. She set all of this up. I'm just a lovely extra guest too. So But yep, hummus is made with chickpeas. It was also something I considered making. We didn't see any like any specific like hummus recipe that I noticed anyhow. Um, and one of the reasons I didn't dig too deep into that was just because our local group has made hummus for a feast within the last year, and I didn't want to get too repetitive. So I didn't dig into that, but yeah, it's absolutely something that gets used for that, and it's made for that.
Okay. Okay.
Welcome back.
Yeah. My whole phone froze, and now Ryan, stop calling me, Ryan. You're not helping.
We were just
Okay.
saying about hummus. Yeah.
Yeah, hummus. I love hummus. I love hummus so much. It doesn't always love me
It's
though.
really good. I was saying that I didn't notice any recipes for it, but I also wasn't really looking for it because we've made hummus for a feast in our local group within the last year and a bit, and I just didn't
Right.
want to get too repetitive, so I wanted something a little bit different. So I didn't like it. There might be references to hummus in this cookbook, but I didn't even look. I was just like, no, I'm not going to make that. But the chickpea dish we did was like boiling it in vegetable broth and then adding onions and a couple of spices and sort of boiling it until it was most of the liquid gone, and we've just like really infused each chickpea with all of the flavor from the broth, and that
Right.
was really tasty. So
That does sound tasty.
yeah, I'll
Mm,
see. I'll look up the original recipe that we were using to see how drastically I tweaked and moved away from it. Um, Oh, it said, take it out from the pod, wash it, put it into a pot, and pour some boiling beef broth onto it. Slice some parsley roots and leaves, add some black pepper and ginger, then serve it.
right.
So, again, I couldn't find parsley root. I substituted parsnips in some of the other dishes, and so I wanted something visually different. And I ended up just going with white radish because I knew it existed at the time, and it would give me the texture and consistency I was going about, and sort of still that earthy flavor. I knew it wasn't an exact substitute, but that was my best closest thing. Plus, it was like 77 cents for a big old white radish, and I was like, that is budget friendly, which I'm a fan of. So I
Yeah,
made that substitution.
daikon radishes are super cheap. So yeah,
Yep.
they're
Yep. So I did that and sort of diced it down into chickpea sized pieces and I tossed them in the last few minutes of the cook because it doesn't take long for the daikon radish to cook. And the chickpeas needed to boil for like an hour and a half in order to get that moisture all out of there. But it ended
right.
up being really tasty, and I think a lot of people liked it. And again, good bang for the buck on that one. I was really happy with that cook.
Yeah, that does sound like a very interesting recipe. Yeah, daikon radish is not very much like its red radish cousin because it's much
No.
milder. It's
Yeah.
much milder. Red
Yep.
radish makes you regret your life choices sometimes. I still love it, but it definitely punishes you for eating it.
Yep.
So were there any as we're coming towards the end of our live stream, were there any what was so the most surprising thing was the way bread does not seem to have been served, at least as per the cookbook, doesn't seem to be
Oh
as
yeah.
something that was served on the side. But was there what other big surprises were awaiting you? Um,
The small amount of cheese mentioned
right.
was a surprise to me compared to like how many recipes you can find with different types of cheese in Germany at the exact same time, stuff like that.
Right. Right.
Yeah, the amount of fish was a surprise. Like I would expect it to be. Um, it makes sense in hindsight, but at the time I was like, "There's so much fish in here. There's so many recipes I can't make." And yeah, some
Yeah.
of the simplicity of the salads just being like dandelion greens, carrot greens, like, or there was they called it a bitter salad, and I'm like, I wonder
Right.
what the bitter is.
Yeah, like
And
because most
there's a
of the
bunch of
things are bitter anyway. Like
yeah,
most of the
yeah,
greens and herbs that were available in this time and place would have been bitter on their own. So that is a good question.
yeah. I was like, what's
What?
the bitter one? Yeah. So I think that was the one that I was like, we're gonna go with watercress. We're gonna sub it in. It's fine. Um, yeah, there was
Watercress is bitter, so
yep,
it's a good
yep.
choice.
Yeah, and yeah, it was really really neat, and the the thing that surprised me most was how much of the cookbook felt relatable still. Like, I was
Right.
expecting to be looking into the past, looking into this other world, looking into this different way of life, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, no, like, bosses still talk like that to their staff."
Right.
And, "Oh, yeah, that's still how people write down recipes when it's, like, just somebody, like, write it like, I'm getting a recipe from my mom, and, 'Oh, and you cook the meat, and you make this and this goes with it,' or something." It's like,
Right.
that was one of the surprises, not so much about the food, but about the tone of it and the culture of it, and that
Right.
was really neat for me that it was still so immersive and relatable and real. It didn't feel like looking at somebody else's world. It's just like, oh,
Right.
that's just us. We're
It's
still
just
like that.
us.
Yeah.
Different clothes, different language, same story, same. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's been very often my also most surprising takeaway from any any historical text I read from the Middle Ages. Like, wow, this does not feel foreign,
Yeah. It doesn't
even
feel
though
like
this
when reading a fantasy text or something. It's just like,
it
yep,
does not. In fact, it's
still
like
us.
fantasy texts do feel fantasy, right? Like reading Robert Jordan's, you know, endless compendium feels like really it feels like a completely different universe, and it
Yeah,
should.
the
It
way
does.
Tolkien describes the fish that they're eating doesn't sound like the way they're describing the fish in this textbook. It
Right.
feels
Right.
different, even though they're still talking about fish, you know.
Right.
So,
And it is very interesting that we aren't actually as different as we like to think we are. And I think that's comforting,
oh
actually,
yeah,
to a certain degree.
yeah,
And maybe also dismaying to a certain degree, depending on the subject of difference. Yeah.
like,
So
yeah,
what are your thoughts about, you talked about maybe in a couple of years going back and doing this again. What would you do differently, like if you have the actual time and resources, reasonable resources, not rich person
yeah,
resources?
yeah,
What would you like to do differently? Would you like to try to do something more, like, because as you said, you made a lot of very reasonable
mhm,
not just accommodations, adjustments.
yeah.
Would you like to go back and try to do something a little like more authentic, try to get closer to the originals? What are your thoughts?
In a perfect world where I can dedicate as much time to things as I want between now and then,
Right.
I'd like to read the cookbook cover to cover
Hmm.
instead of hunting through and picking dishes based on ingredients I can think of that'll go well, and sort of making according to the palette that I know would go over well. Like, I'd like to
Right.
see all of it, and see what I might have missed, like little nuggets that are in here that I didn't see because I wasn't looking at this section.
Right. Right.
That'd be really neat. I think it would add a lot of context.
Yeah.
And then I think some of the things that wouldn't have been in season, and those things that I had a hard time finding, it'd be really nice to give myself time to grow them. Maybe instead of making a feast in the beginning of June, I could see if we can put in a bid for our event in September, like for an event in
Right.
September or something like that.
Right.
That rolls around. It isn't one of our local event seasons for September one, but like one of the larger group that it rotates around. I might be able to do that and get some more of the
Right.
stuff at the end of the harvest. I'd be able to use more of the fresh herbs and stuff instead of having to buy the
Right.
dried ones.
Right.
And I think
Right.
that would be really neat. And then doing a little bit more of try the recipe exactly the way they write it and see what's different compared to how we cook it modernly. When they say fry it in butter and I just toss it in some oil and roast it, and like, okay,
Right.
what does that really change about this dish? Is it different enough that I should go back to that, or is it actually like, okay, yeah, at the end it still gets hot and you've got it in some stuff so it doesn't stick? Yeah, like
Right.
those
Right.
kind of
Right. Right.
experiments
Right.
would be some of the things that I'd want to dig into. Um, yeah, I think that's it was a really neat rabbit hole to fall down when I sort
and
of
and a,
got there
and
by
a, and a
accident.
unique one. Most
Yeah.
people aren't looking east. Most native English speakers are not looking are not looking eastward, really, when they're looking for their medieval cooking inspiration. Although I guess if you're in the Americas, all medieval European food is eastward by modern geography. But um, but yeah, so most of us aren't looking to the eastern part of Europe.
Mhm.
So I think it's really bold and very impressive. And um, I think the fact that there are so many recipes in this collection really just opens up so many doors. And I would wager that as you read through all the recipes, right? If you read through the whole thing, you're going to find reference, especially the way this guy writes, so stream of conscience, right? So
Oh,
you're going to find clues for other recipes.
Oh, definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
It's going to be like, we're talking about rabbit, but if you're cooking parsnips, then you should do this. But we're talking about rabbit, guy. Why are we now talking about
Yeah.
parsnips?
Oh, that happens so
So,
often. Yeah.
so
You
I
got a
think,
question about the
yeah.
tapestry behind you, just so you know.
Ah, the tapestry. Is that a
Yeah.
new tapestry? It is not, I mean, depends on what you mean. What do you mean by new? We've had this since Christmas. And it's actually a cheater. This is a silk screened one, so it's not one of my real tapestries. But what I like about this one is because it's silk screened, we can use thumbtacks to pin it to the ceiling in the kitchen to create this nice medieval background instead of a modern kitchen. So it is a replica of an original, though. It's actually a nobleman who was an Englishman who was part of the Order of the Garter. And so he commissioned this whole tapestry series, and this is one of them. And so it's got his arms woven into it. He was a merchant, so hence the ships, right? And he's got all this reference to his ship, his life, his seaman self, right? So
Yeah.
that doesn't sound good, but yeah. So that is what it is. It's not. This one is not a real tapestry. I do have real tapestries. We can also take this on when we fly places and put it up in hotels to create a medieval space for medieval sewing parties and whatnot as well. So, yeah. Okay, well, Katie, I would like to thank you so much for agreeing to, we just had this crazy chat a couple of days ago where we were just discussing this source, and I was reading through your notes, and then I just asked you if you would come on, and you gamely agreed. So
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. My honor, my pleasure. It was so much fun chatting with you. I'm sure that I will end up down more rabbit holes that will be within your niche as well. And so yeah,
this is super cool. So everyone, if you've been enjoying today, please like and subscribe. I'd like to thank my channel members and my patrons and my Facebook subscribers for financially supporting me so that I can not only do this research and these living history experiments, but that I can share them with you in this manner, because that takes lots of time to make these posts, script, research, and do all of that. So I really appreciate all of your support. If you'd like to support my work, consider becoming a patron on Patreon, a channel member, or a Facebook subscriber. Of those three, the Patreon is the one that actually highest percentage of your money actually reaches me. Facebook charges a 30 to 60% commission on membership fees. I'm not certain about, YouTube charges a 30 to 60% commission on fees. So Patreon also gets you the most extras, extra videos, extra tutorials, all kinds of extra resources I've shared over the years, a massive backlog library of patron only content. I do have also member-only content on YouTube as well, depending on your level of membership. So if you'd like extra resources, extra videos, extra tutorials that no one else has access to, consider becoming one of those three kinds of supporters. Okay, guys, if you had any questions and we didn't answer them during this live stream, pop them in the comments and I promise I will answer them. Otherwise, I thank you all so very much for joining us today. And let me just check. I saw there was just one more comment. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay. Thank you all for joining us today. And until next time, may your adventures in history be creative. Goodbye, everyone. And end.